Chapter 373. Before the heavenly power landed, Heavenly General Jinwu's head was chopped off, and his life was cut off. His body was so powerful, but it was a pity that he could not withstand the sharpness of the celestial shaking legendary sword. Even his astral spirit did not have the time to project. To prevent any accidents, Zhou Xuanji activated Six-Path Sword Shadow and Soul Eater Slash, turning Heavenly General Jinwu into ashes. The entire process happened so quickly that Zhou Shaoxian was dazzled. Before she could see clearly what happened, Heavenly General Jinwu was no longer there. Zhou Xuanji noticed her gaze and lowered his head with a smile. "Don't worry. With your old man here, no one can hurt you." After that, he walked toward the other heavenly guards. At this point in the battle, there were only 17 heavenly guards left. They trembled in fear and quickly retreated. Zhou Xuanji laughed heartily. "Tell Spirit Sovereign Yen that if anyone dares to come to Skyfall again, he will be the one to die." The heavenly guards did not dare to threaten him, and quickly fled. The battle ended just like that. Zhou Xuanji was not injured at all. He displayed his might, and showed everyone how powerful he was. He stored all his legendary swords, and entered the mountain with Zhou Shaoxian. All the disciples cried out the Sword Emperor's name in excitement. Too powerful. They had never seen such a powerful person before. Especially the new disciples. Each of them was more excited than the last, and they could not wait to rush up to Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji looked around, and realized that the number of disciples had doubled. It seemed that Emperor Sword Court had not stopped developing during the years he was away, which made him very satisfied. "In today's battle, I want to tell you to cultivate well. The way of the sword can slay immortals and slay gods. I hope that you can protect me one day." Zhou Xuanji's voice resounded throughout Skyfall, and all the disciples felt their blood boiling. "I hope that you can protect me one day." This sentence was just too charming. Even the odd job disciples had the urge to break Zhou Xuanji's body and crush his bones. If it was someone else who said this, they would not care. But Zhou Xuanji had already shown how powerful he was. How could someone who could protect him be weak? Zhou Xuanji brought Zhou Shaoxian to Jiang Shui and said with a gentle smile, "I'm sorry for making you wait for 13 years. Let's go up and talk." As he spoke, he raised his right arm and embraced Jiang Shui. Hugging his wife and daughter, he turned into a beam of sword light and soared into the sky. Xiao Jingheng, Lin Changge, and the others followed closely behind him. Above the clouds, everyone gathered in the stone pavilion, and before anyone could ask anything, Zhou Xuanji told them about his experiences over the past few years. After he finished speaking, everyone looked at each other and exclaimed in surprise. "So there really is an underworld. Master is really amazing. You can even make friends with Judge Cui. In the future, when you go to the Netherworld, won't you have someone to rely on? Ha ha ha. Does that mean we don't have to fear death? You're thinking too much. At most, I'll let you reincarnate into a good life. Master, you're truly number one in the world now. You're only 73 years old, not even 100. When mentioning Zhou Xuanji's age, everyone could not help but shake their heads and sigh. This was too much of a blow. Zhou Shaoxian stood behind Zhou Xuanji proudly. She also wanted to become a great tribulation bodiless immortal before she turned 100 years old. For the next period of time, let the disciples go out as little as possible. Of course, there is no need to prohibit them. Heroes are born in troubled times. Everyone has to be responsible for their own choices. Zhou Xuanji instructed, and Xiao Jingheng nodded. As Zhou Xuanji's only disciple, he was in charge of all the disciples. The others were in charge of different organizations, such as Xuanji Sword Library, 10,000 Swords House, and so on. After that, he asked everyone to tell him about Emperor Sword Court's situation. Now Emperor Sword Court had more than 1 million disciples. There were 360,000 third-generation disciples, and 700,000 odd job disciples. 3 of the second-generation disciples were missing. They died in accidents while out on missions. Just as everyone was chatting, the pale-faced Daoya old man walked over. Zhou Shaoxian immediately dashed over and hugged him. "Bad old man, I'm back." She giggled. Seeing her, Daoya old man smiled amiably and cursed. "Brat, do you dare to go out alone again? There was no etiquette in their conversation, but they enjoyed it. The reason why she was named Xiaoxian was because of Zhou Xuanji's mother, Lady Xiaoxian. The young Lady Xiaoxian was the same as Zhou Xiaoxian. She was disrespectful to Daoya old man, but their relationship was the best. After the grandfather and granddaughter chatted for a while, Daoya old man sat down beside Zhou Xuanji and sighed. Brat, why didn't you come earlier? If I used my divine ability again, I might really die. His undying divine ability consumed a lot of energy, and he used his lifespan as the price. As such, even though he was only a few thousand years old, he looked even more ancient than Xian Xianghua, who was over 10,000 years old. It was as if he already had one foot in the coffin. Zhou Xuanji shrugged and said, When the time comes, tell Magistrate Cui my name. In your next life, I'll let you live in a wealthy family, and let you live a happy and romantic life. Daoya old man glared at him, feeling quite depressed. Following this, Zhou Xuanji asked Beixiao Wangjian to prepare some food and wine. He was going to drink to his heart's content today. In the northern wilderness region, on an ice mountain in the north, the heavenly palace had temporarily built an ice palace. Spirit Sovereign Yin sat on the main seat. He was nearly 30 meters tall and wore heavy chest armor. His hair was loose, and his muscles were exaggerated. His face was valiant, and his eyes gave off an oppressive aura. He held a massive sword in his right hand, and the blade was pointed at the ground. He looked at the heavenly guards kneeling below, and said in a low voice, Zhou Xuanji killed Heavenly General Zhenwu and 20 or so heavenly guards. Heavenly General Zhenwu's cultivation was 7th tribulation scattered immortal, and the weakest of the heavenly guards was a 1st tribulation scattered immortal. How could they not defeat Zhou Xuanji? His first reaction was disbelief. How could there be such a powerful existence in the mortal realm? Moreover, Zhou Xuanji was not even 100 years old. Even if he was the reincarnation of a powerful being, he could not be so ridiculously powerful. The heavenly guard gritted his teeth and replied, Yes. Thinking back to the battle back then, he felt a chill. Too powerful. He mustered up his courage and said, Sovereign, a lot of your cultivation has been sealed, so you can't be careless. This boy has power that surpasses mortals. Spirit Sovereign Yin frowned and coldly harumphed. As long as he doesn't surpass great tribulation scattered immortal, he won't be able to kill me. Hearing this, the heavenly guard did not say anything else. Spirit Sovereign Yin, right? You want to kill this emperor? You really don't know the immensity of the heavens and earth. Get out here and die. Bai Hao Yisen's furious voice sounded out from outside the palace, causing the heavenly guard to get up. Spirit Sovereign Yan's frown became even deeper as he muttered, Great Emperor Heartless. In the upper realm, Great Emperor Heartless was an influential figure, and he had once looked up to him. However, this fellow had already reincarnated, and even dealing with Xianyuan Zhou was very difficult. He stood up and walked out of the ice palace with his sword. Bai Hao Yisen and Feng Qil stood amidst the flying snow. One stood proudly, while the other felt uneasy. Seeing Spirit Sovereign Yin, Feng Qil swallowed his saliva and said, Great Emperor, are you really going to do this? Bai Hao Yisen laughed condescendingly and said loudly, You don't know this, but back then, when this emperor was in the upper realm, even the Heavenly Hall's lord had to treat me with respect. He's just a spirit sovereign, so what? If it was before, this emperor could kill a bunch of brats like him with a single slap. I'll continue writing. There's more today. The monthly votes are coming. Come. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 374. Hearing Bai Hao Yisen's arrogant words, Spirit Sovereign Yin coldly harumphed. You are no longer the all-powerful Great Emperor Heartless from back then. Because of your own selfish desires, you were deceived by someone and gave up your cultivation to descend into the mortal realm. What a fool! Today, I will let you feel pain that you have never felt before. I will let you be defeated by an existence that you once looked down on. And I will let you live a life worse than death. Spirit Sovereign Yin said coldly. As he spoke, he walked towards Bai Hao Yisen with his sword. His aura quickly exploded out, shaking this world of ice and snow. Feng Qil was so frightened that he took 3 steps back and gulped. He said carefully, If you are going to remember to remind me. Thinking about Bai Hao Yisen's past accomplishments, he did not feel confident. Sigh. Why did he have to follow a great emperor like this? It was too dangerous. Bai Hao Isin did not reply, and continued to look at Spirit Sovereign Yen. A spear wrapped with silver dragon energy appeared in his hand, and he laughed proudly as he said, "Brat, watch carefully." He raised the spear and charged towards Spirit Sovereign Yen, advancing with indomitable will. Unstoppable. After returning to Skyfall, Zhou Xuanji spent 5 days teaching his disciples with the sword before spending the rest of the time with his wife and daughter. After teaching Zhou Xiaoxian, he found that this girl's talent in the way of the sword was truly amazing. She was not inferior to Lin Chang'e at all. Of course, compared to the two 10,000-year princes, she was still a bit inferior. Chen Bantian and Meng Tianling had become close friends. 3 months ago, the two of them had gone out to train and had not returned. It was said that Chen Bantian had reached the spirit refinement stage, while Meng Tianlang had begun to break through to the great realization stage. Putting aside Zhou Xuanji, this cultivation speed was already inconceivable. Emperor Sword Court's strength increased day by day. Even though it had not produced a great tribulation scattered immortal, it could already rank in the top 10 in the world. At this rate, within 100 years, it would have 3 more great tribulation scattered immortals. Apart from the dense spirit chi in Skyfall, it was also related to the colorful celestial tree. This tree needed to bear fruit once every 100 years, and the fruits that fell to the ground would disappear within 10 years. As such, it had to be consumed and could not be stored. Before leaving, Zhou Xuanji listed the 5-color celestial fruit as a first-class reward in the Firmament Inner Court. Doing missions in the Firmament Net could earn contribution points, which could be exchanged for sword techniques, spirit pills, medicines, swords, natural treasures, and so on. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. The heavenly guards did not come to capture Zhou Xuanji again. He enjoyed the leisure. On this day, Lin Chang'e brought back the report, and he stood in front of Zhou Xuanji with a strange expression. Zhou Xuanji looked at Zhou Xiaoxian, who was training her sword not far away. "What's wrong?" he asked. Lin Chang'e said, "Great Emperor Heartless self-destructed again," and his opponent was Spirit Venerable Yen. The explosion flattened the snowy mountains in the surrounding 100 miles, causing a sky-high avalanche that engulfed the cities at the edge of the human race. There were countless casualties. At the mention of this matter, his expression became increasingly strange. As a great emperor, other than self-detonation, did he not have any other abilities? Zhou Xuanji laughed. This old fellow was quite something, self-destructing anyone he saw. Even if Spirit Sovereign Yen did not die, he would be incredibly angry. He asked, "Spirit Sovereign Yen hasn't moved recently. Could it be that he's severely injured?" If that was the case, this would be the best chance to attack Spirit Sovereign Yen. Lin Chang'e nodded. Because of this, all the heavenly guards have been transferred back to Overlook North Ridge. Zhou Xuanji immediately got up and gathered everyone, telling them about his arrangements. No one had any objections. Zhou Xuanji was already powerful enough, to the point that they could not predict him, so they could only support him. You still need to be careful. Don't let your guard down just because you've become stronger, Jiang Shui reminded him. However, she believed that Zhou Xuanji would not be arrogant. If he was arrogant, he would have died long ago. Ever since he had become famous, Zhou Xuanji had been more cautious than anyone else. In his own words, he was paranoid, so every time he killed an enemy, he would stab them tens of times. "Father, take me with you," Zhou Xiaoxian said excitedly. She really liked the scene of Zhou Xuanji taking her into battle. She could sense how powerful he was, and she felt a sense of contempt for him, as if he was just a drop in the ocean. Zhou Xuanji glared at her and said, "Do you want to get your father killed? You're just a small fry, so just focus on cultivating at Skyfall." After saying this, he turned into a ray of sword light, and quickly disappeared over the horizon. Zhou Xiaoxian pouted, feeling quite wronged. Jiang Shui stroked her head and smiled as she said, "Your father is right." Everyone laughed and teased her, making her so angry that she drew her sword and chased after them. After leaving Skyfall, Zhou Xuanji stood on the windcutter sword and rushed toward the north at full speed. He took out the bronze dagger and sent his magic energy into it, summoning Daoseeker. Soon Daoseeker's image appeared. Are you thinking about Spirit Sovereign Yan's injuries? Daoseeker asked first, causing Zhou Xuanji to raise his brow. Ho, this old fellow's predictions were quite accurate. Before Zhou Xuanji could speak, he continued. Spirit Sovereign Yan is indeed injured, but he still has power that surpasses Lu Wuji's. Moreover, a month has passed, and his injuries have mostly recovered. He also has hundreds of heavenly guards with him, and they are all great tribulation scattered immortals. No matter how powerful you are, it will be very difficult for you to kill him. Zhou Xuanji gave a smile that did not seem like a smile and said, You mean for me to retreat? Daoseeker shook his head and said, Go to Juadi Cliff. There's a very powerful being hidden there. You have already established a connection. Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes and immediately thought of Dugu. Dugu was most likely the invincible genius from 50,000 years ago, Devil Emperor Dugu. However, why was his soul at Juadi Cliff? Didn't he ascend? Could he have reincarnated into the mortal realm like Baihao Isin? Even if we find him, how long will it take for him to recover his cultivation in his current state? Zhou Xuanji asked. He did not slow down, nor did he change his direction. Daoseeker was silent. This was indeed a problem. Dugu was only a remnant soul now. Even if he was rescued, he would not be of much use. I'm most worried about one thing now. If I kill Spirit Sovereign Yan, will the Heavenly Hall send someone even more powerful? Zhou Xuanji continued to ask. After fighting the small, he would fight the big. After fighting the big, he would fight the old. Would there be an end to this? Before, he felt that the antagonists were all pigs. They sent themselves to him one after another. But now that he was in the same situation, he felt troubled. Each of the antagonists was very powerful. They won't. Spirit Sovereign Yan is already the most powerful cultivator that the heavenly law can tolerate. If they send someone more powerful, the heavenly law will not tolerate it. The heavenly hall will also be punished by the heavenly law. They won't be so stupid, Daoseeker replied, which made Zhou Xuanji heave a sigh of relief. If so, then Spirit Sovereign Yin was dead for sure. After that, the two chatted for a while. Daoseeker mentioned Xian Xianghua and said that she was close to the time of her ascension. She had lived for tens of thousands of years, and her cultivation was high. It was hard for the mortal realm to tolerate her. Zhou Xuanji was a little worried about her. The heavenly hall was after her. If she ascended, she would not have a good time in the upper realm. 2 days later, Zhou Xuanji passed by Great Zhou and Great Chun and came to the Qiwei Empire. The Qiwei Empire had always kept a low profile. Among the 7 empires, it was not eye-catching. But it was said that there was an old ancestor who had lived for tens of thousands of years in the Qiwei Empire. His power was unfathomable. Calm. Wonderful Bookhouse. Chapter 375. After passing by the Qiwei Empire, Zhou Xuanji did not stop. He did not take that mysterious old ancestor to heart. However, just as he was about to fly past the Qiwei Empire's border, a voice called out to Zhou Xuanji. Sword Emperor, please wait. Zhou Xuanji stopped and looked back. He saw a white-haired old man, sitting on a crimson-red gourd flying over. He was short and had a red face, and he looked at Zhou Xuanji with an indecipherable gaze. Zhou Xuanji looked at him and waited for him to speak. For this fellow to be able to catch up to him, his cultivation was naturally not simple. According to his estimations, he was at least a second tribulation scattered immortal, or even a third tribulation scattered immortal. The Qiwei Empire actually had such an expert hidden. Sword Emperor, are you going to deal with Spirit Sovereign Yan? The white-haired old man asked as he bowed. Zhou Xuanji calmly asked, What do you want? The white-haired old man hurriedly explained, I have no ill intentions. My name is Qi Wei, and I'm the founding emperor of the Qiwei Empire. I'm also on Spirit Sovereign Yan's kill list. Founding Emperor Qi Wei. Zhou Xuanji came to a realization. He remembered this name, but because he did not know him, he did not think too much about it. You want to ally with me? Zhou Xuanji asked. This old fellow's strength could at most tie down a few heavenly guards, and he could not threaten Spirit Sovereign Yan at all. Founding Emperor Qi Wei nodded and bitterly smiled as he said, I know the Heavenly Hall's goal and Spirit Sovereign Yan's selfishness. Even though I can't help you in terms of battle power, I can help you plan. After saying this, he waved his right hand, and a formless barrier covered the two of them. At a glance, the two of them seemed to be invisible, and even divine sense could not enter. Zhou Xuanji asked in confusion, "They all have ulterior motives? Not just to take revenge for Tian?" Founding Emperor Qi Wei nodded and said, "The Northern Wilderness is welcoming a world epoch, and the Heavenly Hall wants to support a new protagonist of the world, to control the Northern Wilderness fate, and make it theirs. In the Upper Realm, each major faction controls one or even several mortal realms, and they are the immortal gods of the mortal realms. The Heavenly Hall is one of them. However, in the Upper Realm, true immortal gods exist, but they are high and mighty, and do not participate in battles." Spirit Sovereign Yin volunteered not because he's loyal to the Heavenly Palace, but because of Fate Emperor River and his son. His son was banished to the mortal realm, so he wants to help his son become a great emperor and escape the Heavenly Palace's control. Zhou Xuanji frowned. He did not expect the Upper Realm to be so complicated. Spirit Sovereign Yin, who looked like a lackey, actually had his own plans. Who was his son? I don't know who Spirit Sovereign Yan's son is for now, but he definitely has great talent, so we have to be careful. Even if we kill Spirit Sovereign Yan, his son might rise up and take revenge for his father. Founding Emperor Qi Wei sighed. His wariness towards Spirit Venerable Yan's son surpassed his wariness towards Spirit Venerable Yan. Zhou Xuanji asked with narrowed eyes, "How do you know so much?" Founding Emperor Qi Wei didn't hide it either. "My ancestor had once ascended and appeared in my dreams 3,000 years ago, so I had no choice but to go into seclusion." Zhou Xuanji sighed in amazement in his heart. Why did it feel like all of them had backgrounds in the Upper Realm? It turned out that this world was a plaything of the Upper Realm, a game of chess created by them. "What do you want me to do?" Zhou Xuanji continued to ask. After saying so much, he most likely didn't want him to directly go and find Spirit Sovereign Yan. Founding Emperor Qi Wei said in a low voice, "Go and take over Fate Emperor River. You will definitely be injured in your battle with Spirit Sovereign Yan, and his son might take this opportunity to devour Fate Emperor River." When that time comes, he did not say anything else. Zhou Xuanji raised his eyebrows and asked mockingly, "Does Fate Emperor River belong to me or to you?" This was a river for becoming a great emperor. Founding Emperor Qi Wei shrugged and said, "Of course it belongs to you. Even if I have Fate Emperor River, I will not be able to become a great emperor. You're different. After ascending, our clan can still support you and help you reach the pinnacle. I just hope that you won't forget this favor in the future." Zhou Xuanji smirked and said, "Is Fate Emperor River in Sun Hill or the Hunyuan Empire?" "Sun Hill, Fate Emperor River is difficult to move," Founding Emperor Qi Wei replied. Founding Emperor Qi Wei replied, and then the two of them rushed towards Sun Tomb. Overlook North Ridge Ice Palace. Spirit Sovereign Yin sat on the main seat, his expression grim. Hundreds of heavenly guards were gathered in the palace, all of them incredibly nervous. "Have you still not found his whereabouts?" Spirit Sovereign Yin asked in a low voice. He was not asking about Zhou Xuanji or Baihao Yisan, but about his son. A horned heavenly guard came out and cupped his fists as he said, "Ji Xian has already reincarnated for a long time, and his fate has long since changed. It will be very difficult to find him. We need time." When mentioning Ji Xian, the heavenly guard's expressions became strange. They all knew that Ji Xian was a sinner of the Heavenly Palace. Why was Spirit Sovereign Yin looking for him? They did not dare to ask too much. This was the mortal realm, and they could not contact the Heavenly Palace. They could only rely on Spirit Sovereign Yin. Continue to search. Also, have you found where Fate Emperor River is? Spirit Sovereign Yin said impatiently as he waved his hand. Ever since Baihao Yisan had self-destructed, his soul had been damaged, and the injuries to his body could not be healed, making him feel quite uncomfortable. "We've found it. It's in Sun Hill, and its owner Yang Di has moved to the Hunyuan Empire. We can occupy Fate Emperor River at any time." Another heavenly guard replied, causing Spirit Sovereign Yin to nod. This made him feel quite pleased. Continue to keep an eye on it, Spirit Sovereign Yin ordered. Following this, his tone changed, and his expression became savage as he said, "Up until now, not a single person on the list has died. The higher-ups are very unhappy with us, so we must force them out. Head to the 8 sanctums and 7 empires to capture 10,000 people each and bring them here. Tell the world that we will capture them once a month until Zhou Xuanji, Bai Hao Yisin, and the others appear." The heavenly guards nodded, not feeling guilty at all. After all, the northern wilderness human race's fate had come to an end, and their deaths were not to be regretted. Also, send 5 fifth tribulation scattered immortals overseas to find suitable races and help them enter the northern wilderness, Spirit Sovereign Yin said. Once the human race was destroyed, it was time for new races to take their place. In front of the bigger picture, the lives of a single race were not much. Sun Hill, Zhou Xuanji and founding Emperor Qi Wei sped on the clouds and looked at the boundless mountain forest ahead. Zhou Xuanji said in amazement, "This place is quite beautiful and has abundant spirit qi. It's suitable for cultivation." Founding Emperor Qi Wei nodded and said enviously, "It's all thanks to Fate Emperor River." He was proficient in fate detection and could divine the location of Fate Emperor River. The two of them flew into the forest without slowing down. Soon they stopped in front of a waterfall. The waterfall was hundreds of meters tall, and the water surged violently. As the water hit the reefs below, countless diamond-like water droplets appeared. The entrance is within the waterfall. There's a mountain path inside that leads underground, founding Emperor Qi Wei said. He waved his right hand, and following this, 3 cries sounded out from the forest opposite the waterfall. Sun Hill looked like it was uninhabited, but in actuality, Yangdi had nurtured many elites. However, if these elites encountered a great tribulation scattered immortal, they would not be able to escape death. Zhou Xuanji and founding Emperor Qi Wei flew into the waterfall. After a while, a ball of demonic qi swept over and entered the waterfall. Chapter 376. After walking for a few thousand meters, Zhou Xuanji and Xian Xuanji heard the sound of flowing river water. They flew out of the cave and landed on the ground. This was a spacious underground space, and there were all kinds of crystals embedded in the walls. There were also man-made oil lamps that lit up this space. In front of them, there was a river that was 15 meters wide. The river water was very rapid, and it flowed from the darkness to the darkness on the other side. Looking closely, one would find that the river water was quite strange. It seemed like a dense fog, but the sound of flowing water did not seem fake. "Is this Fate Emperor River?" Zhou Xuanji asked out of curiosity. The spirit qi here was very dense, and it was not inferior to the peak of Skyfall. Founding Emperor Qi Wei sighed in amazement and said, "It's the first time I've seen Fate Emperor River. It's said that Fate Emperor River flows in a cycle, and only exists on this path." He paused before saying, "If you want to become a great emperor, you have to jump into Fate Emperor River. However, if your body is weak, you will be crushed by the flow of fate. Are you confident?" Zhou Xuanji frowned and asked, "Doesn't becoming a great emperor require the acknowledgement of the heavenly law?" He was confident that he was strong enough, but he did not know much about Fate Emperor River, so he did not dare to act recklessly. "Indeed, but you can prove your Tao with power." At that moment, a familiar female voice sounded out, and Zhou Xuanji and Xian Xianghua looked over. A ball of demonic qi flew out from the cave, and after it dissipated, Xian Xianghua, who was dressed in a bewitching purple dress, walked over slowly. A ball of demonic qi flew out from the cave, and after the demonic qi dissipated, Xian Xianghua, who was dressed in a bewitching purple dress, walked over slowly. "Why are you here?" Zhou Xuanji asked out of curiosity. After 13 years, this old demonic woman was still as flirtatious as ever, and her aura was evidently more powerful. He felt that she was not any weaker than Shi Shenzong. It seemed that while he was not around, Long Aohua had not rested at all. Founding Emperor Qi Wei's expression slightly changed, and a look of wariness appeared in his eyes. Xian Xianghua, she was once the top cultivator in the world, and she was undoubtedly the top cultivator in the demonic path. How could he not have seen her before? Of course it's for Fate Emperor River. After that, she looked at founding Emperor Qi Wei and teased, "Oh, little old man, you're not dead yet." Founding Emperor Qi Wei felt quite awkward and did not know what to say. Back then, he had also been defeated by Xian Xianghua. Before Yang Di had appeared, Xian Xianghua had been invincible in the world. Her strength, personality, and faction were all in line with Long Aoyan's character, so Zhou Xuanji often called her Long Aohua. Back to the main topic, after the Heavenly Palace descended, I guessed that they would target Fate Emperor River. So I came to take a look. You've come at the right time. With your strength, you can definitely enter the river. As long as you become a great emperor, Spirit Sovereign Yin won't be able to do anything to you. Not only was this man in front of her the one she loved, but he was also her pride. He was less than 100 years old, but he had already surpassed the strength of a seventh tribulation scattered immortal. Even Yang Di was inferior to him. Zhou Xuanji asked, "Do you want to go down too?" Xian Xianghua shook her head and said, "If you didn't come, I would naturally go down and risk it all. But since you came, I will protect you. Moreover, your chances of success are greater than mine. You can help me after you become a martial emperor." Zhou Xuanji looked at her and said seriously, "Don't try to trick me. There can only be one great emperor in an era. If there were two great emperors, there would definitely be a battle. The two could not coexist." Xian Xianghua lifted up his chin and smiled as she asked, "How about you protect me in the future?" Zhou Xuanji fell silent. Ever since the two of them had met, it had always been Xian Xianghua who had protected him. Even though he had become powerful and had become the second or first in the world, he had never protected her. She was still so proud and aloof, roaming the world alone. Whenever something happened to him, she would always rush over immediately. If she had any fortuitous encounters, she would immediately inform Zhou Xuanji. This kindness was very great, and it made his heart feel heavy. "You should go down. You're about to ascend after all," Zhou Xuanji said as he sighed. Zhou Xuanji sighed. The thought of Xian Xianghua ascending made him feel a little sad. He did not know how long it would be before they met again. Xian Xianghua pushed him and smiled as she said, "If I become a great emperor and ascend, it will be even more troublesome. Don't waste time. After you become a great emperor, you can protect me after you ascend. If you don't become a great emperor and ascend, it will be difficult for you when you reach the upper realm." After saying this, she pushed Zhou Xuanji, wanting to push him into the river. He could not dissuade her, so he could only jump into Fate Emperor River. Founding Emperor Qi Wei, who had been eating dog food the entire time, sighed and said, "Who would have thought that Sect Lord Xian would have such a passionate side? If he was Xian Xianghua, how could he give this opportunity to the person he loved? He did not have the confidence." Xian Xianghua glanced at him condescendingly and said, "I can become a great emperor without Fate Emperor River. What do you know?" Founding Emperor Qi Wei chuckled. After entering Fate Emperor River, Zhou Xuanji's vision became hazy, and he could not see anything around him. He could not sweep out with his divine sense either, and a terrifying impact continuously swept through his body. He immediately activated Golden Invincible Form, and heavenly lightning wrapped around his body to defend against the impact of fate. Is this what luck is? It's formless and colorless, and when gathered together, it has such an impact. He felt inwardly shocked and immediately activated the World Buddha art. He did not know how to use Fate Emperor River to become a great emperor. No one else knew either. Those who knew had long since ascended, and did not leave behind any specific methods. Soon, he found that under the impact of fate, his body was gradually becoming stronger. This feeling, he suddenly thought of World Overlord. Perhaps he could use this opportunity to cultivate World Overlord. He sat cross-legged in Fate Emperor River, and focused on cultivating. On a tall mountain at the border of Sun Hill, Daoseeker stood before a cliff, and looked in the direction of Fate Emperor River, with a complicated expression. He mumbled, "It's too early. This path is not as beautiful as people think." A black shadow came out from his shoulder, and turned into a horrified face. It laughed sinisterly and said, "You must have miscalculated. Who would have thought that he would reach fourth tribulation scattered immortal cultivation so quickly? and his strength even surpasses seventh tribulation scattered immortals. Who would have thought that he would enter Fate Emperor River so early? Daoseeker sighed and did not reply. Everything was fate, but it was also a variable. The human race is about to collapse, and he alone will not be enough to turn the situation around. After entering Fate Emperor River, it is extremely difficult to become a great emperor. Most geniuses have died at the bottom of the river. Even if he succeeds, he will not be able to save the human race. You need to find another way, the Black Shadow said faintly. The Black Shadow said faintly. Daoseeker understood this. But what other way was there? A few days after Zhou Xuanji entered Fate Emperor River, a piece of news spread across the world. The Heavenly Guards captured 10,000 people from each of the sanctums and empires. They claimed that they would capture people every month and bring them to the Ice Palace to be executed. They claimed that everyone on the kill list would be killed. Once this news spread, the world was shocked. They captured 150,000 people every month, and 1 million people would die in a year. As time passed, Spirit Sovereign Yin would become more and more impatient, and more people would die. But those who were being hunted down by the Heavenly Guards were all powerful, who would be willing to accept their fate. Soon, the Northern Wilderness region was in complete chaos. Update at night. We are ranked 25, which is not enough. If the event ends and we are in the top 10, I will update at least 10 more chapters. If you participate in this activity, you can also get book coins and other prizes. Everyone come to QQ to participate. On the Discover page, in the upper right corner of the Receive Benefits section, you can find the activity, Online Literature True Love Battle. Recommendation votes, monthly votes, gifts, subscriptions and shares can all help. Chapter 377. On the 5th day after the Heavenly Guard's words spread, the leaders of the 7 great dynasties and the 8 sacred grounds gathered together to discuss the matter of the Heavenly Hall. They were in a great hall of the Zhonghai Ziggurat. The Zhonghai Ziggurat was a neutral sacred land and rarely participated in battles. Its reputation was also the most reassuring. Yang Xindi knocked on the table with his finger and spoke first. The Sky Palace's plan is to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Not only is it justifiable to kill, but it also creates a gap between us and the top experts of the world. Once the Sword Emperor and Xian Xianghua are dead, even if the human race survives, we will be at death's door and forever be slaves. What he meant was very simple. He could not allow the Heavenly Palace to do whatever they wanted. Zheng Junlu added, "That's right. We should join forces with the Sword Arch and the others to counterattack the Heavenly Palace." The other leaders had similar opinions. Zhou Xuanji had saved the human race more than once. How could they sacrifice him? Furthermore, if he died, the human race would lose their strongest fighting force. Sunlight Emperor sat in the corner and said nothing. He was now the Hunyuan Emperor, and also the strongest person present. Hearing others boast about Zhou Xuanji, he felt a little displeased. He was number 1 in the world. However, he wasn't angry. He knew who his enemy was. "I think we need to contact the outer seas. The human race should be united," Li Yingyu said. As soon as he said this, everyone fell silent. Overseas. Until today, the various factions could already feel how powerful the overseas region was. However, they did not point it out, and were still immersed in the illusion that the Northern Wilderness region was the most powerful. Now that Li Yingyu mentioned overseas, they felt even more pressured. Sun Tomb, within Fate Emperor River. Vast amounts of spirit qi rose up from the bottom of Fate Emperor River and flowed into Zhou Xuanji's body, making him feel delighted. He could clearly feel his cultivation rapidly increasing. This feeling was indescribable. At the same time, his understanding of the world overlord became less and less. Fate Emperor River was the materialization of the heaven and earth's fate, and the spiritual qi it absorbed came from the depths of the ground. It was the purest spiritual qi. The profundity of being the overlord of the world was to draw upon the power of heaven and earth to become the overlord of the world. It was similar to the current situation. Dong, 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 his heartbeat suddenly sounded out. It was powerful, and even Fate Emperor River could not drown it out. On the riverside, Xian Xianghua and founding Emperor Qi Wei heard it as well. Just how strong is his physical body? Founding Emperor Qi Wei was speechless. This was the first time he had heard such a terrifying heartbeat. They were not to stop Zhou Xuanji, but to kill the other people on the hunting list. In his eyes, Zhou Xuanji would definitely die. Once he entered Fate Emperor River, he would not be able to come out alive. However, the other powerful cultivators of the human race did not know about this, and they might try to stop Zhou Xuanji, wanting to monopolize the potential to become a great emperor. This was a good opportunity for him to capture them all at once. After the 30 heavenly guards set off, Spirit Sovereign Yen got up and smiled as he said, "It's time to visit an old friend." After saying this, he disappeared. The remaining heavenly guards looked at each other before leaving. A world-shaking battle was brewing. 1 month later, Xian Xianghua and founding Emperor Qi Wei's expressions became unsightly. Fortunately, I cast a spell, or else it would have been troublesome, founding Emperor Qi Wei said as he sighed. After Zhou Xuanji entered the river, he had killed everyone in Sun Hill, but he had never thought that the news would still be leaked. Xian Xianghua frowned and said, "We can't go on like this. They will soon discover this place, and we're not sure if we can be disturbed during the process of becoming a great emperor. You need to be prepared to fight to the death." Hearing this, founding Emperor Qi Wei's expression became unsightly. Now they not only had to face the heroes of the world, but they also had to be wary of the heavenly hall. The pressure was so great that he almost could not breathe. The longer one lived, the more one feared death. Founding Emperor Qi Wei suddenly felt some regret. However, thinking about the old ancestor's words in his dreams, his expression became resolute. "I'll send a message to the Qi Wei Empire and ask for reinforcements," founding Emperor Qi Wei said as he gritted his teeth. If Zhou Xuanji failed to become a great emperor, the human race would definitely perish. Rather than waiting for death, it was better to fight to the death. Xian Xianghua nodded and cast a spell to send the message. At that moment, within Fate Emperor River, Zhou Xuanji felt unprecedented pain. He felt as if he was in a pot of boiling oil, and his body was boiling hot. However, his body was unharmed, which was incredibly strange. So uncomfortable. Zhou Xuanji gritted his teeth. He understood that the true difficulty was coming. As long as he could master World Overlord, he would not fear Spirit Sovereign Yen. If he could become a great emperor, he would not have to fear him. If it wasn't for the Violet Demon Monarch's heart, I might already be dead. Zhou Xuanji felt quite shocked in his heart. He could sense that the Violet Demon Monarch's heart was endlessly sending out energy, nourishing his muscles and bones. Even his body could not withstand the impact of Fate Emperor River. If it was anyone else, they would have died without a doubt. Come, Wonderful Book House. Chapter 378. After rejoicing in his heart, Zhou Xuanji began paying attention to the Violet Demon Monarch's heart in his body. The Violet Demon Monarch's heart had already fused with his heart, and there was no distinction between them. However, all this while, he had been unable to see through the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. At this moment, the Violet Demon Monarch's heart was actually absorbing the fate within Fate Emperor River. It was truly mystical. Where did it come from? What is the origin of the Violet Demon Palace? Zhou Xuanji felt quite curious, and wanted to take out the ancient god sword to ask the ancient powerhouses. But he could not take out the divine sword, because the sword spirit had stopped him. According to what the sword spirit had said, if all swords were refined by the heaven and earth fate, then Zhou Xuanji would forever be under the control of the heavenly law. For now, being acknowledged by the heavenly law had only benefits and no disadvantages. But one day, it would become a disadvantage. Because his goal was to surpass the heavenly Tao, Zhou Xuanji could not figure it out, so he stopped thinking about it. He allowed the Violet Demon Monarch's heart to absorb fate, while he continued to cultivate World Overlord. He was already very close to becoming a fifth tribulation bodiless immortal. The spiritual energy from the ground surged wildly into his body. With the help of the Tianxia map, his cultivation level skyrocketed. If he stayed like this for a year, even if he could not achieve the martial monarch realm, he would be reborn. 3 days later, it was his 74th birthday. Analyzed that the sword owner has reached 74 years old. Gotcha started. Ding. Congratulations. The sword owner has obtained Amethyst Chaos Breath Sword, Intimidating Spirit, Diamond Heart Suppressing Sword, Gold, Evil Yellow Sword. Then, the information of the 3 swords appeared before his eyes. Sword name: Myriad Chaotic Breath Sword Grade, Amethyst Description: the best of the wind sword. It is known for its fierceness and sharpness, capable of tearing everything apart. Sword name: Diamond Heart Suppressing Sword Grade, Intimidating Spirit Description: the sword of the Vajra god. It can calm the soul and give people unparalleled faith. Sword name: Evil Yellow Sword Level, Gold Description: legend has it that there are 7 colored divine swords in the evil abyss. Each color represents a type of desire, and yellow represents hope. If all 7 divine swords are gathered, they will merge into an ancient demonic sword. After obtaining another Intimidating Spirit legendary sword, Zhou Xuanji felt quite good. He was interested in the evil yellow sword. At the moment, he already had the evil purple sword, the evil yellow sword, the evil green sword, and the evil crimson sword. He was only 3 colors away from fusing the mysterious ancient demon sword. He wondered how powerful it would be. The 7 swords were only gold ranked, so there was little hope of them surpassing Intimidating Spirit. However, he was still looking forward to it. What if there was a surprise? After that, he discarded all distracting thoughts and continued to concentrate on his cultivation. At the same time, Sun Hill was filled with people. Countless people were searching for Fate Emperor River. Standing at the top of the mountain, one could see traces of cultivators and demons everywhere, within a 500-kilometer radius. From time to time, battles would break out. Fate Emperor River was thousands of meters underground, and ordinary cultivators wouldn't be able to find it. However, there were also quite a number of experts who sneaked underground and searched everywhere. Kacha. Xian Xianghua twisted another person's neck, destroyed his soul, and threw his corpse to the side. Dozens of corpses were piled up on the side like a mass grave. Founding Emperor Qi Wei gritted his teeth and said, "If this goes on, we will become more and more passive." Xian Xianghua did not reply. She had already done what she had to do. Now she could only defend to the death. Founding Emperor Qi Wei said cautiously, "Should I go up and purposely create fake news to lure people away?" Xian Xianghua glanced at him and lightly nodded. He immediately felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders, and he dove into the mountain. Soon, he left the ground and flew above the forest. When he looked around, he could not help but feel quite shocked. He had guessed that there would be many people coming, but he had never thought that there would be so many. Do they all want to die? Instead of dealing with the heavenly hall, they only know how to fight amongst themselves. Founding Emperor Qi Wei cursed inwardly, but he could understand what they were thinking. If he was 5,000 years younger, he would most likely be like these people and go crazy for becoming a great emperor. After all, there were many ancient records stating that anyone who entered Fate Emperor River could become a great emperor. Even though it was not true, it was enough to make people go crazy. He immediately flew into the air and circulated his magic energy as he shouted, "I've found Zhou Xuanji and Fate Emperor River. Hurry and come with me. Fate Emperor River is about to run dry." His voice was like thunder, causing countless humans and demons to turn around. Even the 30 heavenly guards hiding in the forest turned around. Founding Emperor Qi Wei turned and flew away. And seeing this, the others did not have time to think and hurriedly followed. Fate Emperor River is about to run dry. That fellow looks so familiar. Isn't he the founding ancestor of the Qi Wei Empire? He's indeed still alive. Fudge! Zhou Xuanji absorbed it so quickly? Commotion filled the heavens and earth, and founding Emperor Qi Wei looked incredibly worried. His eyes were filled with drama, and it was difficult to tell what was real and what was fake. Countless cultivators and demons majestically flew away with founding Emperor Qi Wei, but there were still a few people searching in this region. In the distance on a cliff, Feng Qiu, who had lost his left arm, looked at this scene and could not help but gulp. Bai Hao Yisan stood by his side and shook his head as he sighed and said, "This is too crazy. Everyone in the world is an idiot, and Zhou Xuanji is also an idiot." Feng Qiu asked in confusion. Why? There was a hint of bitterness in his eyes. He felt that he would be conned to death by Bai Hao Yisan. Fudge. Every time, this bastard would confidently say that he was invincible, and then he would be beaten like a dog. Every time, he would self-destruct. And this time, he had even lost an arm, making him feel quite resentful. 20,000 years ago, there was a ferocious person who stole the human race's fate and became the sole emperor. This caused his descendants to bear karma, and their bloodlines to become impure. They will never be acknowledged by heavenly law, and will never be able to become a great emperor. Bai Hao Yisan said faintly before pausing and sighing. In actuality, many geniuses have been born in the past 20,000 years, and they were not any weaker than the great emperors of the past. It's a pity that they were unable to fight against fate, and they all turned to dust and disappeared from the world. Feng Qiu frowned and asked, then how did the Hegemon Sword Emperor become a great emperor? Bai Hao Yisan gave a mysterious smile and said, you'll have to ask him. Feng Qiu almost coughed up blood. If he could ask him, why would he follow a scammer like you? He did his best to calm his emotions. Facing Bai Hao Yisan, no matter how much resentment he felt, he did not dare to show it. That's right, who is that ferocious person you were talking about? Feng Qiu asked out of curiosity. To be able to steal the human race's fate, he was definitely an incredible person. Bai Hao Yisan shook his head and did not reply. Feng Qiu almost jumped up and slapped him. At that moment, Bai Hao Yisan suddenly laughed and said, this emperor has found Fate Emperor River. After saying this, his body blurred and he dived underground. Feng Qiu hurriedly followed. Underground, Xian Xianghua stood by the riverside and looked down at Fate Emperor River. She could not see Zhou Xuanji's figure, so she did not know how he was doing. She suddenly turned and slapped out with her palm. There was a loud bang. Bai Hao Yisan was blasted into a mountain by the palm wind, and Feng Qiu, who had just appeared, was given a big fright. My invincible great emperor, are you going to kneel again? He turned and looked over, and his pupils constricted as he said in a low voice, Xian Xianghua, why are you here? After asking this question, he wanted to slap himself. After spending so much time with Bai Hao Yisan, he had become stupid. This old demonic woman was definitely here to protect Zhou Xuanji. Come, wonderful book house. Chapter 379. Since you're here, don't even think about leaving. Xian Xianghua's eyes were cold, and her words were filled with extreme killing intent. Feng Qiu hurriedly waved his hand and said, we're not here to take Fate Emperor River. Bai Hao Yisan landed on the ground and dusted off his clothes. As he looked at Xian Xianghua, he brushed aside the hair on his forehead and smiled as he said, this beauty is quite powerful. Don't worry, we're here to stop Spirit Sovereign Yan. We're not interested in Fate Emperor River. Feng Qiu reminded in a low voice, she's Zhou Xuanji's old lover. Hearing this, Bai Hao Yisan's face instantly became green. He felt disgusted. When he looked at Xian Xianghua again, he found her to be an eyesore. He harumphed coldly and said, this emperor wants to ambush Spirit Sovereign Yan here, so I advise you not to obstruct me. Otherwise, this emperor will self-detonate, and you will die, along with that little slut in the river. Whenever Zhou Xuanji was mentioned, he became angry. At the same time, he inwardly cursed that such a perfect and powerful beauty had been taken by Zhou Xuanji. The heavens were so unfair. Xian Xianghua narrowed her eyes and said, you are the great Emperor Heartless who has been defeated in every battle. Bai Hao Yisan felt like his heart was being stabbed, and he almost coughed up blood. Defeat after defeat? He was instantly enraged and prepared to teach Xian Xianghua a lesson. But he was stopped by Feng Qiu. Xian Xianghua, now is not the time to fight. Do you think that you alone can stop the people outside? Other than the people of the world, the 30 great tribulation bodiless immortals of the heavenly palace are also hiding. Feng Qiu said in a low voice, feeling quite good in his heart. Finally, there was someone who could rebuke this dog. Xian Xianghua asked, how are you going to ambush us? Didn't you already lose to Spirit Sovereign Yan once? Bai Hao Yisan was stabbed once again, and his heart felt great pain. Feng Qiu glanced at him, feeling quite pleased inwardly, but on the surface he said seriously, At least we injured Spirit Sovereign Yen. We plan to set up a barrier here. And once Spirit Sovereign Yen steps in, he will be trapped here for a short period of time. Xian Xianghua frowned. What kind of lousy idea was this? Bai Hao Yisan said unhappily. Don't worry, he won't dare to enter Fate Emperor River. Nor will he be able to destroy Fate Emperor River. As long as we can trap him here, this emperor will be able to self-detonate at close range. His soul will be destroyed, and even true gods will not be able to save him. Xian Xianghua asked. Then how should we escape? Hearing this, Feng Qiu's liver ached. He had already been injured twice, and he didn't want to experience it again. Bai Hao Yisan said proudly. That will depend on your own strength. Feng Qiu suddenly had a strong urge to rebel. Xian Xianghua did not agree and sank into hesitation. Bai Hao Yisan was not in a hurry. After all, Spirit Sovereign Yin had not come yet. Juadi Cliff. Spirit Sovereign Yin and Duga stood opposite each other in the valley. What do you think? Isn't it good to have you become the Eternal Lord? This is your chance to turn things around. Spirit Sovereign Yin said, his tone filled with desire. Although the person in front of him was only a remnant soul, his strength had shocked the upper realm. Even the Lord of the Heavenly Palace coveted him. Duga frowned and said, What exactly do you want? I'm afraid the Heavenly Palace doesn't know about this? Spirit Sovereign Yin nodded and raised the corners of his lips, revealing an unruly smile. The Heavenly Palace has decayed. I'm powerful enough, but I can only be a Spirit Sovereign. My son has unparalleled talent, but because he offended the Heavenly Palace's crown prince, he was banished to the mortal realm. Although he spoke arrogantly, his gaze was fixed on Dugu. Duga did not reply immediately and continued to frown. Weighing the pros and cons, Spirit Sovereign Yin turned and looked at the sky as he said, Devil Emperor Dugu, you are a rare genius in the mortal realm. You are not weaker than Lu Wuji, and your death is regrettable. Are you really willing to leave this vast chessboard just like that? Devil Emperor Dugu, the peerless genius from 50,000 years ago. Before he became a great emperor, he defeated Lu Wuji's body. Back then, Lu Wuji slaughtered countless living beings and absorbed countless essence qi. His cultivation surpassed seventh tribulation scattered immortal, but he was still defeated by him. Back then, he was the current Zhou Xuanji. He was still in his prime, and he was still invincible. After so many years, he was only left with a remnant soul in this forbidden ground, struggling at death's door. Wasn't this pitiful? Dugu remained silent. Spirit Sovereign Yen was not in a hurry, and waited for him to make a decision. His target had never been Zhou Xuanji or Bai Hao Yisan. He wanted more, and his desires were greater. Very well, Duga said in a low voice. His eyes flashed, and his demonic chi swayed. Spirit Sovereign Yin gave a smile and loudly laughed. Within Fate Emperor River, Zhou Xuanji did not know what was happening outside. He was completely focused on becoming world overlord. The power of the heavens and earth was his own power. The vastness of the heavens and earth was the vastness of the heart. The goodness of the heavens and earth was the goodness of the spirit. Zhou Xuanji entered a state of enlightenment, and the violet Tai Chi diagram on his forehead gave off a brilliant light. Boom! The spiritual energy surging from the ground suddenly exploded. He was breaking through. Not only was his cultivation breaking through, but his energy technique was also breaking through. The entire Fate Emperor River violently roiled, causing Xian Xianghua and the others to look over. How is this possible? Bai Hao Yisan's eyes widened as he cried out in shock. He's not dead yet. Feng Qiu frowned, and could not help but hold his forehead. As expected, this dog had slapped his own face again. Xian Xianghua was not excited, but her eyes were filled with anticipation. She truly hoped that Zhou Xuanji could succeed in becoming a great emperor. Even though the two of them had never formally shared their feelings, she knew that he had her in his heart. They had a tacit understanding, and their feelings were both in each other's hearts. Rumble. At that moment, the underground space violently trembled, as if it was going to collapse. Bai Hao Yisan suddenly looked up and muttered, Those bastards still found this place. Xian Xianghua frowned and demonic chi flowed out, forming a heavenly demon image, looking savage and terrifying. On land, within a mountain forest, Founding Emperor Qi Wei was surrounded by 30 heavenly guards. His body was covered with blood, and he breathed raggedly. There were people all around him, and all of the cultivators and demons coldly watched on. They were densely packed, and they were like an inescapable net, surrounding him from above and below. Founding Emperor Qi Wei wiped away the blood at his mouth and said coldly, "The Heavenly Hall wants to destroy our human race. Yet you're colluding with them for Fate Emperor River. Don't you find this laughable?" His voice was loud and clear, causing many cultivators' eyes to flicker. Who did not fear the Heavenly Hall? It was because they were afraid that they wanted to become a great emperor. Only when they were powerful would they feel safe. The Heavenly Guard in the lead was 15 meters tall and held 2 axes. He wore diamond-like armor and looked sharp and shiny. He looked at Founding Emperor Qi Wei with his tiger-like eyes and said disdainfully, "Mortal, gods will not kill everyone in the world. They will only kill those who resist. You are someone who must die. Tell me where Fate Emperor River is, and I will let you die a quick death. Otherwise, I will rip out your soul and let you experience heavenly punishment." The other heavenly guards mocked him. A second tribulation scattered a mortal dared to toy with them? Founding Emperor Qi Wei deeply breathed in, and his gaze became resolute. Underground, within Fate Emperor River, Zhou Xuanji broke through to fifth tribulation scattered a mortal. At the same time, he comprehended the 5th level of the World Buddha art, World Overlord. His magic energy greatly increased, and it turned from a small stream into a river into a river, and a river into a vast ocean. 2 consecutive updates, a new month, asking for monthly votes. I want to give it my all and update more. Everyone, please vote more to help me. Since the year before last, I have been trying to qualify for the Great God Pact. I did not succeed the year before, but I became one of the 12 heavenly kings. Last year, because I did not want to leave the plot unfinished, I finished the most powerful mythical emperor and started a new book. With Emperor Starting Point, I created an average of 20,000 votes. Investiture as a Xianxia was not a problem, but it was a pity that I ended it halfway. The new book was not as good as I expected, and the total number of votes for both was only around 6,000. I did not succeed in applying for the Great God Pact. Of course, I did not want to give up, but writing was the most important. This year, I hope that I can get one. Currently, the total number of votes for Legendary Sword Starting Point and Creation Point is almost 8,000. The book has only just begun, and we cannot remain silent. Just like how Zhou Xuanji was about to become a great emperor, everyone was helping each other. I will update, you will vote, and we will work hard together. Cast more monthly votes to save the child. Calm. Wonderful book house. Calm. The soil and rocks were squeezed against each other, moving to both sides and downwards. It was as if a world-destroying force was descending, compressing the earth. Fate Emperor River was battered by the mud and rocks, but it was not affected at all. Anything that got close to it would immediately turn into ashes. Looking up from the ground, one could see a heavenly guard with a pair of axes standing in the sky, looking down. The land within a radius of 100 miles had collapsed as if a hole had appeared in the ground, causing the soil and trees to sink. There were also many cultivators and monsters mixed in with the collapse. They screamed miserably, turning Sun Hill into a purgatory on earth. Not far away, Founding Emperor Qi Wei, who had lost his arms and legs, was bound by iron chains. His entire body was dripping with blood, and he was being watched over by 2 heavenly guards. His eyes were filled with despair as he stared at the destructive power of the twin axes heavenly sentinels. He was too strong. He was almost invincible. He sighed inwardly. It's over. The human race is completely finished. In the distance, many cultivators and monsters were floating in the air. Their bodies stiffened as they looked at the scene in shock. What kind of power was this? They felt helpless. How could mortals like them resist such powerful heavenly guards? Fate Emperor River? They would not dare to snatch it even if they had 10 guts. Do you see this? This is the power of a god. You can only have a chance to live if you submit obediently. The twin axes heavenly sentinel laughed maniacally. His name was Yang Lu, and he was Spirit Sovereign Yan's most powerful subordinate. He was an eighth tribulation scattered immortal. Eighth tribulation scattered immortal. Even the most powerful human in the history of the northern wilderness region had never reached such a cultivation. Even Lu Wuji was only a seventh tribulation scattered immortal when he ascended. He was different from ordinary heavenly sentinels. He had a strong background in the upper realm, and because he worshipped Ji Xian, he became Spirit Sovereign Yan's subordinate. His ambition was the same as Spirit Sovereign Yan's, and he wanted to revive Ji Xian and see him return to the peak. He suddenly understood why so many powerful people chose to descend to the mortal world. This feeling of destroying the weak was simply too satisfying. His unbridled laughter covered the screams below. Soon, a horrifying crater that was thousands of meters deep and hundreds of miles wide appeared. Fate Emperor River also appeared at the bottom of the crater. It flowed out of the soil like a torrent of mist, and then disappeared into the soil in front of it. However, the soil on both sides did not feel wet at all. Yang Lu's gaze was fixed on Fate Emperor River, and his smile became disdainful. Founding Emperor Qi Wei's face was ashen. He did not see Xian Xianghua, and thought that she had escaped. Your sword emperor is down there. Watch how I kill him. Yang Lu raised his battle axe and laughed loudly. No one responded. They were all trembling in fear and despair. Stop! At this moment, a domineering shout was heard. Everyone turned around and saw Jiang Wudi flying over from the east with a large group of Jiang clan disciples. Cultivator armies were also rushing over from other directions. There was the Great Zhou, Great Shang, Great Chen Chiwei, Hunyuan, Donghan and Bahan. There was the Dongyuan Monastery, Merciful Melody Cliff, Red Bank Valley, Songhai Ziggurat, Mountain Abyss Ziggurat, Ice River Valley, Deep Abyss Manor, and 10,000 Swords Divine Mountain. There were also other factions with countless cultivators. 5 million? No. It could be more than 10 million. Most of the human forces in the northern wilderness region were gathered. All the cultivators stared at the heavenly guards furiously and wanted to tear them into pieces. A bunch of ants. Do you think you can win with numbers? Yang Lu laughed disdainfully. As he spoke, he swung his axe forcefully. The domineering axe chi descended like a crescent moon and blasted into Fate Emperor River. This scene made everyone's eyes red. Zhou Xuanji was their biggest hope. If he died, how could the human race fight against the heavenly hall? You're seeking death. Jiang Wudi charged at Yang Lu first, and the other powerful cultivators followed suit. They wanted to fight to the death with Yang Lu. At the same time, inside Fate Emperor River, Zhou Xuanji's mind returned to his body. He felt that something bumped into him, but it did not hurt, so he did not care. After comprehending the power of the heavens and earth, his cultivation grew rapidly. In a short while he broke through to sixth tribulation scattered immortal. His magic energy grew tremendously, and his soul sublimated. Zhou Xuanji was immersed in it, and could not extricate himself. The unprecedented power made him want to roar. But because he was in Fate Emperor River, he could not open his mouth. Mortal, you want to prove your Tao? Right at this moment, a solemn voice suddenly exploded in his mind, jolting him awake in an instant. Who's speaking? He opened his eyes wide and thought in astonishment. Third chapter. One must have the right attitude to ask for monthly votes. During the double monthly vote period, one would need 1,000 monthly votes in one chapter. After the double monthly vote period, one would need 500 monthly votes in one chapter. It's different this time. It's not on the basis of the third chapter, but on the basis of the fourth chapter. Is my attitude good? Vote quickly. After writing, I went to bed. Today is Labor Day, and I will not be home during the day. I will update at night when I come back. Happy Labor Day. Calm. Wonderful book house. Calm. Chapter 381. Mortal, you want to prove your Tao? That solemn voice came again. Zhou Xuanji could not find where he came from, and he could not help but frown. This voice reminded him of Xianyuan Zhou. His tone was indifferent, yet it revealed a divine dignity. Even he couldn't help but feel reverence in his heart. Compared to Xianyuan Zhou, this voice sounded more like heaven. Perhaps he was heaven. Mortal, you want to prove your Tao? This was the third time he asked. Zhou Xuanji said in his heart, I want to. He didn't jump into Fate Emperor River to play around. Boom! A bolt from the blue suddenly sounded in Zhou Xuanji's mind. Next, a massive wave of memories flowed into his mind. His body trembled, causing Fate Emperor River to surge violently. The people outside did not notice the abnormality in Fate Emperor River, and they thought it was caused by Yang Lu's attack. At this moment, the world's strongest were besieging Yang Lu. Tens of millions of cultivators surrounded the 29 heavenly guards and unleashed all sorts of spells at them from all directions. Explosions rang out one after another. The wind blew the clouds away and the earth shook. This battle covered the heavens and the earth. It was a magnificent sight. The heavenly guards were powerful, but dozens of them died every second. Their corpses fell like rain. Blood flowed along the walls of the pit to the bottom, forming a river of blood. Founding Emperor Qi Wei lost his guard and fell to the ground, almost falling to his death. He laid at the bottom of the crater and tilted his head to look at Fate Emperor River. He suddenly realized that something was wrong with Fate Emperor River. This ripple lasted for a very long time, as if something was about to charge out of Fate Emperor River. Could it be? His heartbeat quickened, and his eyes revealed a look of anticipation. At this moment, Xian Xianghua appeared beside Fate Emperor River. She stood there proudly, her purple dress fluttering in the wind. She looked up at the invincible Yang Lu and frowned. Bai Hao Yisin and Feng Qiu came to the edge of the crater and watched the battle from atop the trees. Feng Qiu gulped. Tens of millions of cultivators attacking a few dozen people. This was the first time he had seen such a scene. This group of dogs is really impressive. Bai Hao Yisin crossed his arms as he coldly harumphed, his tone filled with disdain. Back then, no matter how many heavenly guards there were, they would all die when facing him. He didn't attack immediately. He was waiting for Spirit Sovereign Yan. Yang Lu waved his axes, and the flames spread out like a sea of fire, instantly burning 6 Mahayana cultivators to death. His flames were extraordinary, and a mortal's body couldn't withstand it at all. His figure flashed and appeared in front of Jiang Wudi. He raised his axe and swung it at him. In an instant, Jiang Wudi sensed fatal danger. He subconsciously turned his body, but his right arm was still chopped off. Your reaction is very fast. Unfortunately, you still have to die. Yang Lu smiled contemptuously. He turned around and kicked Jiang Wudi's chest, causing his body to fall into the sky. Too strong. Number 3 under heaven was completely powerless in front of him. The other peerless experts of the human race were shocked. How could they defeat Yang Lu? Looking at the surrounding battlefield, the other heavenly guards were like tigers that had entered a flock of sheep, mercilessly slaughtering without restraint. If things continued like this, the allied human forces would definitely be defeated, and everyone would die. Rumble, thunderclouds suddenly gathered. Yang Lu raised his right arm high, and countless bolts of lightning fell on his battle axe. It was as if many dragons were entangled in it, struggling crazily. Everyone around him was so scared that they all retreated. A terrifying pressure raged in the sky, and even the other people who were fighting stopped. The heavenly guards panicked and quickly moved away from Yang Lu. Their behavior made the human race even more panicked. Uneasiness, despair, and fear spread. Yang Lu's face was ferocious. Under the light of the lightning, he looked like an evil demon that could destroy the world. Mortals, do you want to see the true power of a god? Once my axe falls, all of you will die. He laughed wildly. Black clouds covered the sky, and he turned the world into purgatory. Hearing this, the cultivators all retreated. Even Li Yingyu, Shitan Changshi, and the others didn't dare to go near him. Damn it! Yang Xindi gritted his teeth. Yang Lu's power made him angry and afraid. He was in despair. Were mortals really powerless against the upper realm? Ha ha ha. Go to hell. Continue to be afraid in hell. Yang Lu laughed maniacally. Just when he finished speaking, he swung his axe down. The apocalyptic lightning struck the ground, causing the entire sky to flicker with lightning. Everyone was engulfed by the lightning, as though they were killed by the might of the heavens. Go! Bai Hao Yisin quickly fled with Feng Qiu. Inside Fate Emperor River, Zhou Xuanji was in a mysterious state. He couldn't sense anything in the outside world. Even though Fate Emperor River was rippling violently, he was not affected. After a long while, He opened his eyes slowly. A purple Tai Chi diagram appeared in each of his pupils, which looked demonic and mysterious. He frowned, and waves of shock surged in his heart. The heavenly law told him the path to becoming a great emperor. He needed to defeat 10 powerful cultivators who were qualified to become a great emperor. But the more great emperor candidates he defeated, the more powerful he would be after becoming a great emperor. But how many great emperor candidates were there in the world? Yang Di was one. Did Spirit Sovereign Yin belong to the upper realm count? Bai Hao Yisan had already become a great emperor, so he definitely counted. But even so, he couldn't gather 10. He was furious in his heart, and felt that he was being played by the heavenly law. Anti-Xian. At this moment, a scream filled with sorrow and anger came from above, which shocked Zhou Xuanji so much that he looked up immediately. He recognized the owner of the voice immediately. Zhou Xiaoxian. Thunderclouds billowed, causing the heavens and earth to fall into darkness. Countless corpses lay in the gigantic pit that spanned hundreds of miles. Even the forest ruins at the edge had corpses, and there were severed limbs and heads everywhere. Yang Lu was surrounded by lightning, and looked down at the land like a thunder god. The 29 heavenly guards gathered around him, and smiled condescendingly. Following their gaze, Xian Xianghua was half-kneeling beside Fate Emperor River. She was covered in blood, and her hair was a mess. Her purple dress was charred, and her veil was gone. Her beautiful yet cold face was filled with a murderous aura. She stared at Yang Lu and the others. Other than anger, hatred and murderous intent, there was no fear or despair. Far away, Daoya old man grabbed Zhou Xiaoshuan's arm so that she could not break free. Jiang Shui, Lin Changge, Ning Zifeng, Xiao Jinghong, and the others led hundreds of thousands of Emperor Sword Court's disciples and flew into the sky. They quickly surrounded the 30 heavenly guards. Their hearts were heavy. Everywhere they looked, there were miserable corpses, and the thick smell of blood was so pungent. Yo, another group of insects that don't care about their lives. Yang Lu sneered. His tone was cold, and he did not take Emperor Sword Court seriously at all. He lowered his head to look at Xian Xianghua, and the corners of his mouth curled up as he laughed arrogantly. *TCH, I see that you are quite pretty. Why don't you become my house pet? As long as you become my dog, I will let you live. The other heavenly guards burst out laughing like demons from hell. Wonderful book house. Chapter 382. Facing Yang Lu's savagery and brutality, Xian Xianghua did not surrender. She stood up slowly, and the demonic qi behind her condensed into a heavenly demon again. She looked around, and the corpses of the dead made her a little dazed. Back then, the war between the righteous and demonic factions was as tragic as this. Back then, she was fearless and mighty with her demonic might. She did not care about the pitiful people who died in the war. But now, their positions were reversed. She became the weak one, and she could not fight against the arrogant Yang Lu at all. She felt a little sad in her heart. The human race had been fighting among themselves for so many years, but they were still going to be defeated by their enemies. No, there was still hope. She suddenly thought of Zhou Xuanji, and her eyes became determined. The heavenly demon behind her roared into the sky, which made the heavenly guards' mocking laughter even louder. This woman still wants to fight. The northern wilderness region is just SOSO. Let's just kill her. Can't we find a beauty? Haha, such a strong beauty is rare. I really don't know what she's thinking. She's overestimating herself. They ridiculed him wantonly, completely unaware of how cruel their actions were. Yang Lu raised his right arm, and raised his axe again. He looked down at Xian Xianghua with disdain. Save Auntie Xian. Zhou Xiaoxian struggled with all her might. She was so anxious that she cried. When she was young, although Xian Xianghua only visited her twice, she treated her well, and even taught her cultivation. She had always admired Xian Xianghua, the most powerful woman in the world, the former top cultivator in the world. The others looked terrible, but what should they do? Jiang Shui took out her staff, and took a deep breath. She was ready to fight. She knew that her cultivation was not high enough, but Zhou Xuanji owed Xian Xianghua too much. Not only that, Xian Xianghua even taught her the celestial devil rebirth technique. No matter if she was Zhou Xuanji's wife or herself, She could not just stand by and watch. What are you doing? Daoya old man stared at her and reprimanded. Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Tsongjian, Han Shenbua, Lin Changge, Ning Zifeng, and the others stood up one after another. They could escape from this battle. But where could they run to? Rumble. At this moment, the crater began to shake violently. Everyone turned to look. Fate Emperor River was twisting violently, as though something was about to burst out. The pebbles and rocks in the huge pit were shaken into the air. It was a spectacular scene. Whoosh! A bolt of lightning struck down like a giant dragon, blasting a huge hole in the wall of the pit. Its destructive power was terrifying to the extreme. That is, founding Emperor Qi Wei, who was lying in the distance, became excited. His breathing quickened, and his upper body trembled. Yang Lu frowned and had a bad premonition. He swung his axe at once. Tens of thousands of thunderbolts suddenly fell, causing the world to lose its color. A terrifying explosion resounded. An invisible barrier actually blocked all of the lightning. The scene was spectacular and shocking, causing everyone to be moved. The heavenly guards were even more shocked. They could not believe their eyes. They all subconsciously looked towards Fate Emperor River. A figure slowly rose up from Fate Emperor River. It was Zhou Xuanji. He wore the Tri-Sun Flame Qi robe, and his black hair fluttered in the wind. His face was grave and stern, and a purple Tai Chi diagram appeared on his forehead. His hands hung down naturally, and as soon as he appeared, all living things went silent and the thunder dissipated. He stood on Fate Emperor River, and did not give off any might. He was like a mortal, and his aura was almost non-existent, as if he had fused with the heavens and the earth. Everyone's eyes were gathered on him. Zhou Xiaoxian, Jiang Shui, Xiao Jinghong, and the others were all excited. He really did not die. The hundreds of thousands of Emperor Sword Court's disciples were so excited that their faces were red. They clenched their fists and tried their best to control their emotions. Zhou Xuanji glanced at the heavenly guards before looking at Xian Xianghua and asked, "Are you okay?" His tone was calm, and no emotions could be heard from him. He had already seen the countless corpses around him, which was enough to tell how intense the battle had been. Xian Xianghua heaved a sigh of relief, and sat down with her legs crossed. "If you still didn't come out, I might have really died," she said. She could not see through Zhou Xuanji, and the more he was like this, the more at ease she felt. Zhou Xuanji looked up at the heavenly guards and rose up slowly. The sun-devouring Tiango sword appeared in his hand. Even in the darkness, his sword still shone with a cold radiance. "You are Zhou Xuanji? A sixth tribulation scattered immortal. You are quite powerful," Yang Lu said with squinted eyes. Who else could come out from Fate Emperor River other than Zhou Xuanji? His words surprised Emperor Sword Court, and those who were still alive. The Sword Emperor already had the cultivation of a sixth tribulation scattered immortal. Everyone in the northern wilderness region knew that Zhou Xuanji's power could not be measured by cultivation stages. But every time he broke through a stage, his power would grow tremendously. But it's a pity that I have the cultivation of an eighth tribulation scattered immortal. No matter how powerful you are not a match for me. Now, kneel before me and beg me to spare your life. Depending on your performance, I will decide your life and death." Yang Lu laughed savagely, and did not take Zhou Xuanji seriously at all. He was a genius too. He could tell that Zhou Xuanji had yet to become a great emperor, so he was not afraid. Zhou Xuanji stopped in the air, and caressed the sun-devouring Tiango sword. "Although I have yet to become a great emperor, I have broken through. Do you know what stage I have broken through to?" Yang Lu laughed condescendingly, and deliberately mystified him. He did not ask the heavenly guards to attack, but to kill Zhou Xuanji himself. After killing the top cultivator in the world, Spirit Sovereign Yin would surely be happy. When Ji Xian revives, he would surely reward him. "If I cannot kill you within 3 moves, I will kill myself here." Zhou Xuanji looked up at Yang Lu and said slowly. His tone was casual, but his eyes were so sharp. With this, the heavenly guards laughed even louder. "Is this guy crazy? A sixth tribulation scattered immortal killed an eighth tribulation scattered immortal in 3 moves?" Yang Lu was laughing too, but his heart tightened suddenly, because he noticed that the hundreds of thousands of Emperor Sword Court's disciples were still looking at Zhou Xuanji passionately, as though they were injected with chicken blood. Could it be that Zhou Xuanji had some tricks up his sleeves? Without a word, he charged toward Zhou Xuanji with his axes in both hands. His speed was extremely fast. It was so fast that everyone's eyes could not keep up with him, including the other 29 heavenly guards. But Zhou Xuanji was even faster. He raised his hand and swung his sword, but no one saw it. In their eyes he did not even raise his hand. A stream of sword light flashed and disappeared in an instant. Yang Lu's pupils contracted and instinctively wanted to block with his axes. Pshhhh. His head was separated from his body. His head spun rapidly in the air, and blood spurted out from his neck. The scene froze. Everyone's mouth was agape. From their point of view, Zhou Xuanji did not attack, but Yang Lu's head flew off strangely. While they were horrified, they felt a chill down their spines. They had witnessed Yang Lu's prowess with their own eyes. Only 1 out of 10 million cultivators survived, which was enough to show how powerful he was. Zhou Xuanji came up to Yang Lu in one step and grabbed his shoulder. He activated world internalization to absorb his magic energy. Sorry, I overestimated you. 1 slash is enough. Zhou Xuanji stared at Yang Lu's head and laughed coldly. Calm. Wonderful bookhouse. Chapter 383. You. How is this possible? Yang Lu, who only had his head left, stared at Zhou Xuanji furiously. Fear was hidden deep in his eyes. He had sensed Zhou Xuanji's sword chi just now, but it was too fast. It was so fast that he couldn't dodge or block it. They were clearly 2 major realms apart. Why was this happening? He couldn't understand. He wanted to regain control of his body, but he found that he couldn't control it. He couldn't even leave his body even if he wanted to. This was because his soul was in his physical body, and there was only the will of his soul in his head. What are you doing? He screamed in horror. He finally felt the aura of death. Zhou Xuanji pressed down on his shoulder and laughed coldly. I want to kill you. You can beg me now. Depending on your performance, I will decide your life and death. This was said by Yang Lu. Now that Zhou Xuanji returned it to him, it was undoubtedly humiliating him. The heavenly guards in the distance were drenched in cold sweat. They did not dare to act at all. They could not see how powerful Zhou Xuanji was, and they could only feel a chill down their spines. Yang Lu was so angry that he almost exploded, but he could clearly feel his vitality fading away. I was wrong. Please spare my life, he gritted his teeth and said. After saying this, he couldn't help but feel a little dizzy. He had never been so humiliated before. If this matter were to spread to the upper realm, how would he survive? However, Zhou Xuanji did not stop, and continued to absorb his magic energy. An 8th tribulation scattered immortal's magic energy was incredibly powerful, and it was enough for his cultivation to improve. Yang Lu was anxious. He could no longer care about his pride and face. I beg you, spare my life. I beg you, just treat me as a dog, don't kill me. I'm willing to be your slave. Please let me go this time. Ah, what do you want me to do for you to forgive me? Yang Lu's face was full of fear and despair, screaming at the top of his lungs. Seeing him in such a miserable state, no one sympathized with him. Instead, they felt carefree. Those dead cultivators had also begged Yang Lu to let them live. This guy deserved to die. He should be in even more pain. Soon, Zhou Xuanji absorbed all of Yang Lu's magic energy and destroyed his soul. An 8th tribulation bodiless celestial was killed without any resistance. He turned to look at the other 29 heavenly guards. The heavenly guards were terrified and wanted to escape, but they didn't know how to report back. Spirit Sovereign Yin was more brutal than Yang Lu, and he never showed mercy to his subordinates. Zhou Xuanji took Yang Lu's storage ring and strolled toward the heavenly guards. Father is mighty, Zhou Shaoxian cried out excitedly. Just when she was in despair and indignation because of Xian Xianghua, her father appeared once again and killed his enemies with absolute power. At this moment, her eyes were about to turn into stars. Jiang Shui was also excited, but she didn't make a fuss like Zhou Shaoxian. In her heart, Zhou Xuanji could always turn misfortune into fortune. Hundreds of thousands of Emperor Sword Court's disciples shouted the oath. Using the sword to support the world. Using the sword to save the world. Using the sword to support the world. Using the sword to save the world. Using the sword to support the world. Using the sword to save the world. Their blood boiled and their eyes brimmed with tears. How many times had Zhou Xuanji saved the northern wilderness region? Their patriarch was invincible. He was their undefeatable faith. Zhou Xuanji pointed his sword at the 29 heavenly guards and asked, "Where is Spirit Sovereign Yen?" After realizing World Overlord, he could control the power of the heavens and earth. He could fight in the northern wilderness region without any hindrance. The previous slash was not obstructed by space or spiritual qi. It landed on Yang Lu's body directly. It was so fast that it could not be described with speed. Next, his target was Spirit Sovereign Yen. What was worth mentioning was that although Yang Lu was powerful, he was not a great emperor candidate. Great emperor candidate did not refer to power, but to someone who was recognized by the heavenly law. Although Zhou Xuanji received instructions from the heavenly law and knew about the path to becoming a great emperor, he still could not understand what was so special about being a great emperor. "We don't know," a heavenly guard replied carefully. With so many heavenly guards around, if Zhou Xuanji wanted to attack, they were confident that they could escape. No matter how powerful Zhou Xuanji was, he could not kill all of them at the same time. Humans had the mentality of luck, and so did other intelligent beings, including those from the upper realm. Zhou Xuanji smiled, and a murderous intent beamed out from his eyes. The heavenly guards' expressions changed drastically. They immediately used all kinds of divine abilities and escaped in different directions. Zhou Xuanji did not pursue them. As long as the heavenly guards were still in the northern wilderness region, they could not escape. He could track their location with the power of the heavens and the earth. He came to Xian Xianghua's back with a flash. He took out the Holy Light Redemption sword and slashed it lightly on her shoulder to heal her. This scene gave many people a fright. But soon, they realized that Zhou Xuanji did not kill Xian Xianghua. Her aura was also recovering, which was quite miraculous. Emperor Sword Court's disciples, listen up. Clean up the battlefield, and check if there are any injured. Bury the dead. Zhou Xuanji instructed loudly as he healed Xian Xianghua. Hundreds of thousands of disciples began to move immediately. Jiang Shui and the others flew toward Zhou Xuanji. They had too many questions to ask. Far away. Bai Hao Yisin and Feng Qul stood in the forest, both of them silent. Cold sweat covered Feng Qul's forehead. His eyes were wide open, and blood veins covered his eyeballs. He could not understand what he had just seen. Has he already become a great emperor? He asked carefully. Other than becoming a great emperor, how else could Zhou Xuanji be so powerful? That was an eighth tribulation scattered immortal. That was a cultivation that even the most powerful human in history could not reach before they ascended. Bai Hao Yisin said faintly with a complicated look in his eyes. He did not become a great emperor, but he can be called a great emperor candidate. He must have comprehended another powerful energy. Facing Zhou Xuanji, he felt pressured. Once this brat becomes a great emperor, how powerful would he be? At Juedi Cliff, Spirit Sovereign Yin sat on a rock and stared ahead. A ball of demonic qi was surging at the edge of the cliff, which vaguely took the shape of a human. His expression changed suddenly, and he frowned slightly. Yang Lu is dead. It shouldn't be. Could it be because of Fate Emperor River? He mumbled to himself. He was a little confused but did not panic. The difference in power between him and Yang Lu was huge. He could crush Yang Lu with one hand, or else how could the unruly Yang Lu submit to him? At this moment, the demonic qi dispersed. A silhouette landed on the edge of the cliff. It was Dugu. He should be called Devil Emperor Dugu. Devil Emperor Dugu stood tall and straight. Demonic qi wrapped around his body, covering his flesh. His face was pale, and his white hair reached the ground. His eyes were blood red with black pupils. He twisted his neck and sighed in amazement. It feels so good to be reborn. His eyes beamed with brilliance. 50,000 years ago, he dominated the world and was invincible. He became a great emperor and ascended. Because he died in the war in the upper realm, his soul was hidden in Juedi Cliff. After so many years, his ambition was almost extinguished. However, the first thing he did after his rebirth was to revive his ambition. A domineering aura exploded from his body, causing the rocks on the cliff to tremble violently. Spirit Sovereign Yin got up and clapped his hands as he laughed. The world-shaking demon emperor has finally been reborn. It's time for the immortal and mortal realms to feel your anger. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 384. Anger? Why would I be angry? Devil Emperor Duga glanced at Spirit Sovereign Yin and asked indifferently. Seeing his attitude, Spirit Sovereign Yin was not angry. If you want to take revenge, I'm afraid you'll need to cultivate for a long time. But I have another way. Spirit Sovereign Yin chuckled. Devil Emperor Dugu quickly arrived in front of him, leaving behind a series of afterimages. The two of them were less than half a meter apart. Spirit Sovereign Yan's expression did not change. He was not afraid of Devil Emperor Dugu at all. Devil Emperor Dugu wasn't strong at the moment. Speak. Devil Emperor Dugu stared into his eyes and said faintly. Spirit Sovereign Yin looked excited as he said, I obtained a heavenly law stone by chance, and I can use it to create an invincible army. Heavenly law stone. Devil Emperor Dugu narrowed his eyes and asked, What's the heavenly Tao stone? Is it related to the worldly stone? Spirit Sovereign Yin replied, Both of them have similar effects. One contains the power of heavenly law, while the other contains the power of heaven and earth. They are both world creation wonders. Then he revealed his plan. Devil Emperor Dugu furrowed his brows when he heard this. He stared at Spirit Sovereign Yin and said, You are playing with fire. Spirit Sovereign Yin understood what he meant and said nonchalantly, What's there to be afraid of? Those powerful beings are either dead or unable to descend due to their cultivation. As long as we dominate the northern wilderness region and break away from the heavenly palace's control, we can develop on our own. Who knows, we might even be able to nurture the northern wilderness region into a large world. At that time, you and I will be the lord of the Kiliacosm. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. Even his body began to tremble. Devil Emperor Duga's brows were still furrowed. Spirit Sovereign Yan's tone changed as he said, I also want to find my son. He was once Grandmaster Aoshi's disciple, and was banished to the mortal world by the heavenly palace. If you can help me find him, I can let him take you as his master. He was trying to rope in Devil Emperor Dugu. Devil Emperor Dugu was surprised. Oh, Grandmaster Aoshi? Speaking of Ji Xian, Spirit Sovereign Yin revealed a proud expression. He began to talk about Ji Xian's life. Sun Tum, Zhou Xuanji, and the others stood before Fate Emperor River and started to think about how to deal with it. Founding Emperor Qi Wei's entire body was covered in bandages. Even though he was a second tribulation loose immortal, he couldn't regrow his limbs because he didn't cultivate such a magical technique. He was not like Daoya Old Man, who was weak in combat, but had mastered many life-saving abilities and spells. Let's just bury it here. If we bring Fate Emperor River to Skyfall, it will attract a lot of trouble in the future. Moreover, Fate Emperor River will not disappear unless the northern wilderness no longer exists. Fate Emperor River could allow one to become a great emperor. It sounded very powerful, but for the vast majority of people, it was useless. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, Since it's like this, let's fill this place up and let Fate Emperor River return underground. He no longer needed Fate Emperor River. He already had the heavenly Tao mark in the depths of his soul. As long as he defeated 10 quasi-emperors, he would be able to become a martial emperor. The others had no objections. For them, becoming a great emperor was an extremely distant goal, almost untouchable. The group flew out of the crater and began to use various spells to fill the crater. Xiao Jinghong flew to Zhou Xuanji's side and said softly, Revered teacher, Jiang Wudi is severely injured and on the verge of death. Should we save him? Not only him. Songhai Ziggurat Lord Li Yinyu, Mountain Abyss Ziggurat Lord Zeng Junlu, and the other sanctum leaders are still alive. Zhou Xuanji replied calmly, Of course we must save them. Now, he no longer saw the 8 sanctums and 7 empires as his opponents. The existence of these factions was to ensure the power of the human race, so they must stay. Xiao Jingheng immediately left and passed down the order. At the same time, news of the battle at Sun Tomb spread. Tens of millions of people were killed or injured. The 8 sanctums and 7 empires were all severely injured. The prowess of an 8th tribulation scattered immortal shocked everyone. When the world heard that Zhou Xuanji dashed out from Fate Emperor River, saved Xian Xianghua, and killed an 8th tribulation scattered immortal, their blood boiled. This matter was like a hero's story in an opera, full of twists and turns. Zhou Xuanji consolidated his position as the world's top overlord. At the same time, the world's hatred for Xian Xianghua decreased. At least Xian Xianghua was fighting for the northern wilderness region. A few days later, the world began to point their fingers at Yang Di. Why didn't the world's top cultivator, the current Emperor Han Yuan, participate in the battle? Soon, the world was filled with rumors. The Sword Emperor proved himself again. Those who went to Sun Tomb to stop the Sword Emperor from becoming a great emperor deserved to die. Zhou Xuanji is too powerful. He's going to surpass the predecessors. So the way of the sword can be so powerful. When will Spirit Sovereign Yan die? Yang Di is not worthy to be mentioned in the same breath as Zhou Xuanji. Half a month later, Zhou Xuanji flew to Skyfall with hundreds of thousands of Emperor Sword Court disciples. He sent founding Emperor Qi Wei back first. As for the other factions, he could not care so much. It was already good enough for him to treat their injuries. It would be too troublesome to send them back one by one. Hundreds of thousands of disciples traveled across mountains and rivers while practicing their sword techniques. The scene was extremely majestic. After being stimulated by Zhou Xuanji, the disciples began to practice their sword techniques even without his orders. They wanted to be as powerful as their grand teacher, who could kill powerful cultivators from the upper realm with his sword. This day, Zhou Xuanji was teaching his daughter when he heard Dao Seeker's voice. "Meet me for an important matter." Zhou Xuanji heard her and gave his daughter a few reminders before disappearing. The others were not surprised and continued their journey. 100 miles away, Zhou Xuanji and Dao Seeker stood on a cliff. Below them were connected mountains that were shrouded in mist. It was hazy and beautiful like a paradise. "This is bad." Spirit Sovereign Yin revived Devil Emperor Dugu, Dao Seeker said with a deep voice. Dao Seeker said in a low voice. He felt a sense of pressure at the mention of Devil Emperor Dugu. He had lived for countless years, but had never witnessed Lu Wuji's prowess. But he had witnessed Devil Emperor Dugu's invincible figure, which was unforgettable. Zhou Xuanji did not panic. He knew about Devil Emperor Dugu a long time ago. Without Devil Emperor Dugu's help, he could not have obtained the Tianxia map. He still had a good impression of Devil Emperor Dugu. Of course, if Devil Emperor Dugu wanted to be his enemy, he would not show mercy. Moreover, Devil Emperor Dugu's rebirth was a great help to him. This guy was not a great emperor candidate. He was a true great emperor. Other than that, Spirit Sovereign Yen obtained a Heavenly Law stone. He's going to use the power of Heavenly Law to create Heavenly Law puppets for all the powerhouses in the northern wilderness region. This will be the most terrifying crisis in history. There is no chance of winning. Dao Seeker continued. His countenance turned increasingly grim, and there was even fear in his eyes. Every generation of the northern wilderness region's almighty. It wasn't just the human clan's almighty beings. There were also almighty beings from other races. If Lu Wuji, Emperor Xia, Devil Emperor Dugu, Great Emperor Heartless, and the 9 emperors of the Way of the Sword joined forces, who could stop them? Just thinking about it made his scalp tingle. Zhou Xuanji asked with a frown. What's a Heavenly Law puppet? Dao Seeker explained that every generation of almighties in the northern wilderness region had worked hard to become a great emperor, so they had been branded with the Heavenly Law imprint. The Heavenly Law puppets created by Spirit Sovereign Yen were like clones, and they all had the cultivation and strength of their original bodies when they left the northern wilderness region. After Zhou Xuanji understood, he had a strange look on his face. He was just fretting about not having a quasi-emperor to defeat. Chapter 385. How many Heavenly Law puppets are there exactly? Zhou Xuanji asked in a low voice. He cursed in his heart. Just as the first wave subsided, another wave came. Can you let me rest for a while? I'm only 74 years old. How could he endure so much pressure? Daoseeker sighed and said, I can't think about it. I advise you to hide overseas and ascend as soon as possible. Spread this news to the upper realm. Spirit Sovereign Yan's actions will definitely incur the wrath of the northern wilderness region's past powerhouses. When the time comes, they won't just stand by and watch. Zhou Xuanji frowned deeply. If it were him, he would be displeased to find out that someone had created his own heavenly law puppet. But he was still far from ascending. Moreover, after he ascended, he would be killed by the heavenly palace before he could even meet those powerful beings. After the northern wilderness region's experts ascended, the heavenly palace was the first to receive them. If the northern wilderness region was a dynasty, the heavenly palace would be the dynasty that controlled it. Spirit Sovereign Yan is currently at Juedi Cliff. It's best if you take a detour on your way back. I'll be heading overseas to fight for a chance of survival for the human race. Daoseeker said solemnly with a gloomy expression. Remember, don't go looking for Spirit Sovereign Yan. You are indeed very strong, but he has many unparalleled experts under him. Don't go looking for your death. After saying that, Daoseeker left in a hurry. Zhou Xuanji pondered on the spot and began to recall historical records. The Xia Emperor, who had led the human race to become the hegemon of the universe. The strongest of the human race, Lu Wuji. He was a noble who could shake mountains and rivers and almost exterminate the demon race. The unparalleled demon emperor of the demon race, the great Emperor Wu Wang, who had once enslaved the human race. Wait a minute. There were too many legendary existences that gave him a headache just thinking about it. He shook his head and returned to Emperor Sword Court's group. He gathered all his trusted aides and walked at the very front. He softly told them about this matter. What? Really? Northern Sword Valiant widened his eyes and exclaimed. He looked as if he had seen a ghost. In the next second, he hurriedly covered his mouth, afraid that the disciples would hear. Daoya old man's face was ashen, and he muttered, It's over, it's all over. The others were also frightened. Zhou Xuanji was powerful indeed, but to those heavenly law puppets, he was just a junior. People were always in awe of their ancestors, especially those who were legendary. Furthermore, they were not facing just one ancestor, but all of them. Even someone as proud as Xian Xianghua fell silent. Should we tell the world about this and gather the power of the world? Huang Lianxin asked hesitantly. Such a calamity should not be shouldered by Emperor Sword Court alone, much less by Zhou Xuanji. There was no chance of winning this round. Jiang Shui shook her head and said, Currently both humans and demons have suffered great losses. Not to mention Spirit Sovereign Yan and his heavenly law puppet army. Even that eighth tribulation scattered immortal heavenly guard is enough to overturn the world. It was no exaggeration to say that Zhou Xuanji was already the most outstanding person in the world. If not for him, the northern wilderness region's human race might have already perished. Zhou Xiaoxian grabbed Zhou Xuanji's arm tightly and said, Father, don't be reckless. She was no longer a child and understood the seriousness of the matter. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and did not say anything. He would not retreat from this battle. It was not only for the sake of achieving the martial monarch realm, but also for the sake of protecting the people around him. The more time passed, the more heavenly law puppets there would be. Why don't I ascend now and pass on this matter? Xian Xianghua muttered. In the past, she did not bother to ask for reinforcements, but the situation was different now. The enemy was unprecedentedly powerful. Just like what Daoseeker said, other than this method, they would surely lose. No, the Heavenly Hall wants to kill you too. Aren't you courting death? Zhou Xuanji rejected decisively, before looking at everyone. He said meaningfully, Everyone, the northern wilderness region is facing more and more calamities. There is not much time left for you. Cultivate well. You all return to Skyfall, and focus on your cultivation. I will go to Juedi Cliff alone. If I cannot defeat them, I will retreat. With my current power, no one can stop me if I want to escape. Maybe Spirit Sovereign Yan has not created too many heavenly law puppets. We still have a chance. Everyone heard him and fell silent. They wanted to stop him, but they were in no position to do so. Zhou Shaoxian was anxious and wanted to speak, but Zhou Xuanji covered her mouth. He looked at Jiang Shui and said with a smile, "Take good care of this girl. Don't run out again. I don't want to be surrounded by enemies and have to think of a way to save her." Zhou Shaoxian stopped struggling. Even her ears were blushing. Jiang Shui nodded and said with a smile, "I believe you." She did not just believe that he could come back alive. Zhou Xuanji immediately turned into a stream of sword light and left. Lin Chang'e clenched his fists and cursed, "It's all my fault. I'm too weak. Master has to fight alone every time." Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Zongjian, Ning Zifeng Han Shinbua, Chongming Demon Monarch, and the others looked terrible too. The little black snake lay on a big's head and sighed. "Seems like I need to work hard too." Daoya old man sighed and did not speak further. He looked toward the direction where Zhou Xuanji left, and his eyes became determined. At Juedi Cliff. Devil Emperor Dugu sat by the cliff and cultivated. Spirit Sovereign Yin stood on a giant boulder not far away. He raised a boulder that was radiating with rainbow radiance in his right hand. Thunderclouds billowed, mesmerizing the heavens and earth. Around the giant boulder were 5 silhouettes of different shapes and sizes. Each of them was emanating a horrifying aura. Boom! A bolt of lightning landed and turned into a silhouette. It landed beside the giant boulder and stood there quietly. These were all Heavenly Law puppets. Spirit Sovereign Yin looked down at the newly created Heavenly Law puppets and praised. "Finally, a great emperor. Marquis, I didn't expect you to work for me one day." Marquis. Devil Emperor Dugu opened his eyes and looked a little shocked. Marquis' silhouette was domineering. Even though he did not speak or move, he was still emanating a domineering aura of invincibility. Thousands of waves ripple across the ages. Marquis' divine might since ancient times. Devil Emperor Dugu mumbled to himself. He stared at Marquis with a passionate gaze. He had always been eager to battle against such a great emperor. It was a pity that after he ascended, Marquis was still as dazzling as ever. He died before he could reach the height to fight against Marquis. It was such a pity. Spirit Sovereign Yin laughed heartily. He was in a good mood. At this moment an ear-piercing sound came from afar. Bai Hao Isin, who was wearing silver armor, charged over with his spear. "Spirit Sovereign Yin," he said coldly with a stern expression, "I finally found you. This emperor has finally found you. Today only one of us can survive." After witnessing Zhou Xuanji's prowess, he felt that Spirit Sovereign Yin might not be a match for Zhou Xuanji. He had to avenge his humiliation before Zhou Xuanji attacked. Spirit Sovereign Yin glanced at him and smiled disdainfully. Another bolt of lightning landed and turned into the Heavenly Law puppets. Bai Hao Isin stopped and looked at the 7 Heavenly Law puppets with a frown. Soon, his eyes locked onto Marquis, and his expression changed drastically. Even though Marquis was only a silhouette, he could not forget that silhouette. When Marquis ascended, he became famous. At that time, who did not revere Marquis' domineering aura? He was one of them. He immediately thought of many things and had a bad premonition. Without a word, he raised his arms and roared furiously, "Die!" Spirit Sovereign Yan's expression changed. "This dog is using this move again." Calm. Wonderful Bookhouse. Chapter 386. Please enter the text. Zhou Xuanji hurried toward Juedi Cliff. The closer he got to Juedi Cliff, the more uneasy he felt. He had mastered World Overlord and could sense the heaven and earth. The crisis of the world had arrived, and it was getting more and more intense. According to his speed, he would arrive at Juedi Cliff in half a day. Originally, he could borrow the power of heaven and earth to directly teleport over. But that would consume too much energy, and it would be easy for him to fall into a situation where he would be attacked from both sides. Today, I will use the power of the heavens to revive the past generations of almighty beings. And together, we will create a new era in the northern wilderness region. The fate of the human race has come to an end, and if you want to live on, you can become slaves. A new main character of the world will be born, and each clan can fight for it. As long as you find me and prove your strength, you will all have the chance to become the main character of the world. Spirit Sovereign Yan's voice suddenly resounded throughout the entire northern wilderness region. Zhou Xuanji frowned. Such a vicious plan. This was to lure the overseas races into the northern wilderness region. His evil intentions should be punished. Zhou Xuanji sped up again. However, Spirit Sovereign Yan had yet to finish his words. I've already awakened King Ho. Next, I'll awaken Emperor Xia Lu Wuji, He Gemin Sword Emperor, Wang Xiaofei, Shi Shenzong, Great Emperor Wu Wang, Buddha Ghost Emperor and many others. I'll use the power of the heavens to awaken all of the experts who have the qualifications to become great emperors. Great Emperor Heartless tried to stop me, but was suppressed by me. Let me give you a word of advice. The will of God is not something you can stop. These words shocked the world. All the experts who have the qualifications to become emperors will be awakened? How could this be? The first reaction of all living beings in the world was disbelief. However, when they thought of how omnipotent immortals and gods were, they were terrified. Even the invincible great Emperor Heartless 90,000 years ago was no match for him, let alone the people of the present. Lu Wuji, who had wreaked havoc in the northern wilderness region, had been resurrected. Would the Sword Emperor be able to block so many experts by himself? For a moment, the world was in chaos. The crisis of the apocalypse made people crazy. Zhou Xuanji was shocked in his heart. He did not expect Spirit Sovereign Yan to have already created a noble heavenly law puppet. No one could say for sure how powerful a noble was. However, the marquises could definitely be ranked in the top 10 in history when it came to the ability to suppress and rule an era. Even Daoya Old Man held Marquis in high esteem, claiming that Marquis was the most domineering existence among the ancestors of the human race. It was only because the era was different. If he had been born in the era of Emperor Xia, his historical status would definitely not be lower than Emperor Xia's. Of course, it was meaningless to talk about what-ifs. Zhou Xuanji took out the ancient god sword, and as he advanced he summoned the 9 souls. He told them about Spirit Sovereign Yan's actions. Emperor Zhao was the first to curse. This kid is playing with fire. Every expert had their own pride. If those almighty existences who were still alive found out that they had become heavenly law puppets, how angry would they be? The higher one's cultivation was, the more they cared about their reputation. The heavenly palace, huh? Such a force is indeed full of villains. Fortunately, it's only the northern wilderness region. What do you mean, Lucky? Wang Ho, Emperor Xia Lu Wuji, Great Emperor Wu Wang and Buddha Ghost Emperor. Who could stand against the 5 of them? It's not just them. There might be even more ancient existences. Devil Emperor Dugu is also supporting that brat from the Sky Palace. The souls of the almighty existences began discussing. They were not all from the northern wilderness region, but they understood how powerful this tribulation was. Countless years had passed, and the northern wilderness region had produced too many peerless cultivators. If these people formed an army, they could dominate all the mortal realms. Sovereign Xian, who had been silent, said, "The heavenly law stone cannot be used indefinitely. Using the heavenly law's power will be greatly depleted. We can still make it if we rush over now." Emperor Hanlin said, "You are already a great emperor candidate. To you this is a serendipity, but it's more of a disaster than a blessing." Zhou Xuanji nodded, and continued to ask them which powerful cultivators were worth paying attention to. At Juadi Cliff, Bai Hao Isin was pinned to a stone stele. His limbs were pierced by metal nails, and his neck and waist were bound by metal chains. He could not move at all. There was still a trace of blood at the corner of his lips. Looking at the 15 figures in front of him, his expression was extremely grim. He turned to look at Devil Emperor Dugu, who was cultivating, and said, "Hey, Dugu brat, are you really going to help a nobody like this?" In the upper realm, Spirit Sovereign Yin was indeed a nobody. Having heard that, Spirit Sovereign Yin was indifferent. He had already blocked Bai Hao Isin. Devil Emperor Dugu opened his eyes and looked at Bai Hao Isin. "Where there is a will, there is a will. Don't underestimate any nobody. Great Emperor Heartless, since you came to the lower realm, how many nobodies have you been forced to self-destruct?" Bai Hao Isin heard this, and his expression changed as though he had eaten a fly. He wanted to retort, but he did not know how. Boom! Another bolt of lightning struck. It was another heavenly law puppet. Bai Hao Isin glanced over, and his expression changed drastically. Lu Wuji. The heavenly law puppet represented the cultivation and power of the original Lu Wuji before his ascension. This meant that this Lu Wuji was much more powerful than the previous Lu Wuji's corpse, because he possessed all the divine abilities and battle experience of Lu Wuji before his ascension. Seeing Lu Wuji's arrival, Spirit Sovereign Yin smiled. Devil Emperor Duga glanced at Lu Wuji thoughtfully. They did not notice that Marquis tilted his head slightly, as though he was looking at Lu Wuji. All the heavenly law puppets were motionless. Even though they were emanating powerful auras, they were still like wooden pillars. Oi, kid, are you absolutely confident that these heavenly law puppets will listen to you? Bai Hao Isin asked Spirit Sovereign Yin suddenly. Spirit Sovereign Yin had already told him about the heavenly law stone, so he naturally wanted to rope him in. Although Great Emperor Heartless was in such a sorry state, Spirit Sovereign Yin knew how arrogant this guy was in the upper realm. Of course, the heavenly law stone is in my hands, so they will definitely listen to me, Spirit Sovereign Yin said proudly. Having heard this, Bai Hao Isin squinted his eyes. At this moment, Spirit Sovereign Yin smiled proudly and said, "Did you find a way?" He suddenly put the heavenly law stone into his mouth. Next, his body gave off a rainbow radiance as he turned into the heavenly law stone. Bai Hao Isin almost cursed it out loud. So shameless. Devil Emperor Dugu was speechless. Swoosh, an ear-piercing sound came. The three turned around and saw Zhou Xuanji flying over on his sword with a powerful aura. Seeing him, Bai Hao Isin was pleasantly surprised and cried out, "Brat Zhou, save this emperor. This emperor owes you a favor in the future." "You are Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji?" Spirit Sovereign Yin said with a disdainful smile. The 16 heavenly law puppets turned to look at Zhou Xuanji. All of them unleashed their auras, which shook the clouds and shook the mountains within a radius of 100 miles. Zhou Xuanji stopped 100 meters away from them. He immediately saw Lu Wuji's heavenly law puppet. Very powerful. Even though he had already mastered World Overlord, he still sensed a trace of danger. Devil Emperor Duga looked up at him and said, "Zhou Xuanji, give up. No matter how powerful you are, you can't turn the tables now. Why don't we work together?" Spirit Sovereign Yin did not speak. Zhou Xuanji's talent and righteousness made him wary. Such a genius must be eliminated. But he had to give Devil Emperor Duga some face. "If I give up, will you spare the Northern Wilderness region's humans?" Zhou Xuanji asked calmly. He was curious. Since Spirit Sovereign Yin wanted to betray the Heavenly Hall, why must he eradicate the humans? Chapter 387. No. The humans of the Northern Wilderness region must be annihilated. Spirit Sovereign Yin replied forcefully. He could take Zhou Xuanji in, but he could not allow Zhou Xuanji to make any requests. If Zhou Xuanji was unwilling, then he could kill Zhou Xuanji with a justifiable reason. Devil Emperor Dugu shook his head and said, "No race is always the main character of the world. In other mortal realms, the demons might be in charge, and the demons might be in charge. Why be so stubborn? You will ascend sooner or later to pursue a higher great Tao." He watched Zhou Xuanji's rise. In his heart, Zhou Xuanji was like his junior or disciple. He really did not want this brat to die here. Zhou Xuanji took out the sun-devouring Tiango sword and True Lord Xianqing sword and said, "If so, then let's fight. I also want to see how powerful the previous powerful cultivators are." Devil Emperor Duga shook his head and did not speak anymore. He closed his eyes and continued his cultivation. Spirit Sovereign Yin burst out in laughter. His laughter was filled with disdain. This brat is so arrogant. But he could understand. A genius who had never tasted defeat always thought that he was the most powerful and looked down on his seniors. The 17 heavenly law puppets leaped up and charged toward Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji focused his eyes and charged at them with his dual sword wills. His body was like a sharp sword, flashing with a cold light. In the blink of an eye, he was fighting with the 17 heavenly law puppets. He danced with both swords at extreme speed. But even so, he was at a disadvantage. Wang Ho did not have any enchanted artifacts, but only his fists and legs. His attacks were powerful and domineering. Zhou Xuanji could hardly block each of his punches and kicks. Lu Wuji used his palms as weapons. Bolts of lightning coiled around him and tore apart the sword qi with great power. The other 15 heavenly law puppets were not weak either. Each had their own abilities. Some wielded swords, some wielded sabers, some wielded spears like dragons, and some swung their horsetail whisks with boundless magic energy. Their attacks were extremely ferocious. No matter how exquisite Zhou Xuanji's sword techniques were, he could not block them. Seeing this, Spirit Sovereign Yin laughed even more savagely. Bai Hao Yisun sighed. It's over. No one can save this emperor. At this moment, Zhou Xuanji activated the divine energy of the sun-devouring Tiango sword and slashed with all his might. Marquis, Lu Wuji, and the other heavenly law puppets quickly dodged, but one heavenly law puppet was too slow and turned into ashes right away. Spirit Sovereign Yin stopped laughing and started to watch the battle seriously. Bai Hao Yisun's eyes lit up, and anticipation filled his heart. With the sword soul, Zhou Xuanji regained the upper hand. He didn't borrow the power of heaven and earth. He wanted to see how strong he was. Apart from Marquis and Lu Wuji, everyone else's strength was average. At most they were a bit stronger than Shi Shinzong. Of course, Shi Shinzong was not weak. If it was one-on-one, he was confident that he could defeat all the other puppets, except for Lu Wuji and Marquis. Lu Wuji was a 7th tribulation scattered immortal, and so was Marquis. However, their divine powers were very powerful. Facing Zhou Xuanji's attacks, they could always dodge, or use some kind of divine ability to dissipate his sword qi. Previously, Lu Wuji only had the cultivation of his main body, and his power was not even 1/10 of the main body's. The 9 hell flame extinction that he had inherited was quite powerful. So Zhou Xuanji was wary of Lu Wuji, opening the yin-yang boundary again. There was a loud bang. A bolt of lightning descended and turned into a heavenly law puppet. Without hesitation, it charged toward Zhou Xuanji. This scene made Zhou Xuanji frown. He suddenly remembered that his target was Spirit Sovereign Yin, and not these heavenly law puppets. Now 18 heavenly law puppets had appeared. He had destroyed one, and the other 17 were enough for him to become a great emperor. After the thought, he borrowed the power of heaven and earth, and his aura changed suddenly. The purple Tai Chi diagram appeared on his forehead. He activated world reincarnation, and all the heavenly law puppets were pushed back by his magic energy. Taking this opportunity, Zhou Xuanji came up to Spirit Sovereign Yin with one step. He activated the sky-dominating divine sword soul, and a sword light flashed. Spirit Sovereign Yin dodged in fear, but his left shoulder and arm were still sliced off. He quickly retreated, distancing himself from Zhou Xuanji. The other 17 heavenly law puppets came over and blocked Zhou Xuanji with all their divine abilities. This guy is a 9th tribulation scattered immortal. Zhou Xuanji was shocked in his heart. Spirit Sovereign Yin was much more powerful than Yang Lu. Their reaction speed was worlds apart. However, it was impossible for someone to surpass Great Tribulation scattered immortal in the mortal world. He could only be a 9th tribulation scattered immortal. Spirit Sovereign Yin roared furiously, "Bastard! You dare to injure me? I will make you beg for your death." After he spoke, the rainbow radiance on his body soared into the clouds, and his original form was revealed. His left shoulder was covered in blood, and he had lost his left arm. His face was hideous, and he wanted to tear Zhou Xuanji into pieces. Boom! 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 9 bolts of lightning struck down and turned into 9 heavenly law puppets. All of them were powerful swordsmen. Some held 2 swords, some held a broadsword, and some held a long sword that was curved like a snake. Seeing them, Zhou Xuanji felt unwell. He recognized the Hegemon Sword Emperor and Sky Sundering Sword Emperor Wang Xiaofei at first glance. He had seen the 2 sword emperors in the inheritance space, and he had a deep memory of them. 9 emperors of the sword's way. The 9 heavenly law puppets charged toward Zhou Xuanji and besieged him together with the other 17 heavenly law puppets. Seeing that the situation was not good, Zhou Xuanji activated the Emperor's Way Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha. The majestic thousand-hand sword Buddha rose from the ground and blasted the 26 heavenly law puppets away with the power of heaven and earth and world reincarnation. The 1,000-hand sword Buddha, which was 2,000 meters tall, pierced through the clouds like a holy Buddha with divine might. Baihao Isin was speechless and mumbled, "This brat's talent is too outrageous." Devil Emperor Dugu opened his eyes and frowned. He actually mastered the overlord of the realm. Devil Emperor Dugu sighed. His emotions were complicated. He liked Zhou Xuanji more like this, but he had no choice but to watch from the sidelines. The hegemon sword emperor held his sword with both hands and slashed at the 1,000-hand sword Buddha furiously. A sword chi that was thousands of meters long clashed with the 1,000-hand sword Buddha, but it was a pity that it could not shake the 1,000-hand sword Buddha. Zhou Xuanji fused into the 1,000-hand sword Buddha's body. He stretched out 1,000 arms, each holding a golden sword, and slashed furiously. Facing so many seniors who were qualified to be great emperors, Zhou Xuanji felt proud. Very good. Today, he was going to challenge the most powerful cultivator in history, to prove that he was the most powerful cultivator in history. Boom! The ground sank and billowing dust billowed. Devil Emperor Dugu and Spirit Sovereign Yin dodged quickly. Damn you! This emperor is here too. Baihao Isin cursed as he was covered in dust. Following this, the ground caved in, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. The 26 Heavens Path puppets showed no fear, and continued to attack the 1,000-hand sword Buddha. Although the 1,000-hand sword Buddha had 1,000 swords, it was unable to keep up with the speed of these experts. It was like an elephant swatting at a fly. If not for the world's power, Zhou Xuanji would have been torn to shreds. He did not panic, and his gaze locked onto Spirit Sovereign Yin. Spirit Sovereign Yin landed on the barren land 10,000 meters away, glaring at him fiercely. The 1,000-hand sword Buddha suddenly disappeared, and Zhou Xuanji came before Spirit Sovereign Yin in a single step. He held the sun-devouring Tiango sword in his right hand, and furiously slashed out. Boom! A beam of light burst out from the ground, and caught the sun-devouring Tiango sword with one hand. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. Who is this? Calm. Wonderful bookstore calm. Chapter 388. The heavenly law puppet in front of Zhou Xuanji was muscular and domineering. It had 4 arms and grabbed Zhou Xuanji's sword with one hand, while punching his chest with both fists, sending him flying away. He quickly stabilized himself in the air, and stared coldly at the heavenly Tao puppet. Spirit Sovereign Yin laughed condescendingly. Zhou Xuanji, this is the first heavenly law puppet I created. He has been hiding underground just in case. Do you know who he is? There's no way you can defeat him. Zhou Xuanji took out all of the legendary swords above gold grade, and had them float around him, pointing them at Spirit Sovereign Yin. Who? He asked indifferently. No matter who it was, it didn't matter. They were all fakes. This is War God Xiling. I don't need to explain his background, do I? Spirit Sovereign Yin smiled proudly. When he mentioned this name, his tone became slightly fanatical. The War God Xiling was an ancient existence in the legends. Legend had it that he was the one who taught Emperor Xia divine abilities, allowing him to lead the human race to dominate the northern wilderness region. He ascended before Emperor Xia ascended to the top. Of course, Zhou Xuanji had heard of this name before. The teacher of the human sovereign was incredibly famous, and the 9 emperors of the Way of the Sword could not compare to him. He wasn't afraid of War God Xiling, and he attacked Spirit Sovereign Yin again. The other heavenly law puppets charged over again, and attacked him from all sides. Each heavenly law puppet was more powerful than a third tribulation scattered immortal. They did not have intelligence, and did not know fear, which made Zhou Xuanji very difficult to deal with. This was especially true for War God Xiling. This guy was clearly more powerful than Wang Ho and Lu Wuji, and the power contained in his 4 arms was terrifying. He even suspected that this guy could lift Skyfall. Even with the power of heaven and earth in his body, he could not get close to Spirit Sovereign Yin. Devil Emperor Duga sighed. The fact that Zhou Xuanji could fight to such a degree already shocked him. If it were him, he wouldn't be able to stop so many generations of experts. The 9 emperors of the Way of the Sword. The 9 types of sword Daos had endless transformations and were extremely domineering. The noble fists could shake mountains and rivers. Lu Wuji possessed remarkable abilities and could turn the rotten into the miraculous. The war god Xiling was even more awe-inspiring and invincible. Apart from this, there were still so many experts who had the potential to become great emperors. Zhou Xuanji had no chance of victory. Zhou Xuanji, do you feel powerless? Spirit Sovereign Yin laughed maniacally and continued to summon heavenly law puppets. I admit that you are indeed very strong. Your talent is greater than my son's. Unfortunately, you don't have a brain and can't tell the correct path. Death cannot wipe out your crimes. Don't worry, I will give you a chance to reincarnate. Be a good mortal in your next life. Drift and sink in the human world, and don't fight with the gods. His voice reverberated throughout heaven and earth, drowning out the rumbling of thunder and the wailing of ghosts and gods. Boom! Another heavenly law puppet descended. As the powerful light dissipated, he charged toward Zhou Xuanji straightaway. Zhou Xuanji controlled dozens of legendary swords to fight, and even though he was surrounded, he was not at a disadvantage. It was just that he was unable to come into contact with Spirit Sovereign Yin. At this moment, he was like an ancient war god, insufferably arrogant. His aura was so strong that he was worthy of being called the Sword Emperor. Spirit Sovereign Yin suddenly thought of something, and a strange smile appeared on his face. He raised his left hand and waved it towards the sky. In an instant, a gigantic illusion appeared in the sky above the northern wilderness region. It was the scene of the heavenly law puppets surrounding Zhou Xuanji. With his cultivation, he naturally could not do such a thing. But now that he was connected to the heavenly law, he was the heavens. Look, this is the top cultivator of the northern wilderness region. He's powerful indeed. He's fighting war god Xiling, Lu Wuji, Wang Ho, the 9 emperors of the Sword's Way, and so on. His opponents are all powerful cultivators who are qualified to become great emperors in each era. It's a pity that no matter how devilish his talent is, he can't defend against the joint attacks of so many powerful cultivators. How long do you think he can last? Spirit Sovereign Yan's voice resounded across the entire northern wilderness region. He was not trying to boost Zhou Xuanji's reputation, but to make everyone despair. To him, Zhou Xuanji was going to die without a doubt, so why not shock the world before his death? All humans, demons, and ghosts looked up. No one cried out in shock. Everyone was silent. The battle was so intense that it dazzled everyone's eyes. Everyone could sense that person's anxiety and danger. If Zhou Xuanji was a little slower, he would have died without a doubt. Skyfall. All the disciples looked up at the sky and clenched their fists. They were furious and expectant. They were furious for Spirit Sovereign Yin, and expectant for Zhou Xuanji. On the top of the mountain, Jiang Shui held Zhou Xiaoshuan's hand tightly. Both mother and daughter's eyes were red, and they did not even dare to breathe loudly. The others' expressions were also unsightly. Xiao Jinghong and Zhao Zongjin's bodies trembled. They could not hold back their anger. Zhou Xuanji displayed the demeanor of a sword emperor to the world. Everyone fought against him, but he was incredibly domineering. He fought against 28 alone, and the ground crumbled. Lightning interweaved, and it was as though the end of the world had arrived. At this moment, he could no longer care about Spirit Sovereign Yan's actions. The enemy's attack gave him no time to think about anything else. Hunyuan Royal City. Yang Di stood in front of the palace and looked up at the sky. His brows were tightly furrowed. He did not rejoice in Zhou Xuanji's misfortune, but felt indignant. He's already so powerful, he mumbled to himself, feeling very sullen. All along, he had thought that he was more powerful than Zhou Xuanji. After all, they had never fought before. But looking at Zhou Xuanji's performance, he felt helpless. If it were him, he would not even last 10 rounds. Even he was shocked, let alone the rest of the world. Everyone was silent. This battle was so tragic and shocking in their eyes. They could only pray for Zhou Xuanji. The demons were silent too, but they did not despair. They could only rise up after the human race was destroyed. But the current Sword Emperor was really powerful. He was almost invincible. On a tall mountain, the man in the woven rush raincoat stood on the summit. Mist shrouded him, and an illusion was reflected in the sky. Witnessing Zhou Xuanji's battle, he was speechless for a long time. A long while later. So I was wrong. He sighed, and his tone was filled with desolation. Compared to Zhou Xuanji, the Yang Di he chose was still a hermit, and lacked the charisma of a human leader. If he knew that Zhou Xuanji was so devilishly talented, he would have changed his choice. But there were no ifs. At this rate, Zhou Xuanji would surely die. More and more heavenly law puppets appeared. 30, 35, 40. Zhou Xuanji was at a complete disadvantage. Even with the Tianxia map providing him with endless magic energy, and the world's power to support him, he could not withstand so many powerful cultivators. Spirit Sovereign Yen did not mock Zhou Xuanji anymore. He was silent, as though he was convinced by Zhou Xuanji's willpower. Devil Emperor Dougal levitated in the sky with a deep frown. His eyes sparkled, and no one knew what he was thinking. Zhou Xuanji, who was at the end of his tether, was still fighting. All sorts of sword techniques and sword souls appeared. Even though he was injured, he did not hesitate to attack. Brat, you are going to die. Emperor Zhao's voice came into Zhou Xuanji's ears. The ancient god sword was fighting, so the 9 souls could communicate with him. Zhou Xuanji ignored him. His eyes were cold as he focused on the battle. He knew that if this continued he would surely lose. But now he had no way out. Even if he wanted to escape, the 40 heavenly law puppets would not give him the chance. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 389. I didn't expect the Heavenly Pathstone to have such a use. Unfortunately, no one in the mortal world can win. Lu Wuji's voice sounded in Zhou Xuanji's mind, filled with helplessness. If Zhou Xuanji died, they would not be able to live either. However, death was not scary to them. Their current state could be said to be worse than death. If they didn't have their own obsessions, how could they have become the sword souls of the ancient god sword? Zhou Xuanji continuously switched between world reincarnation and world internalization. His hands, and the dozens of legendary swords did not stop either. If he stopped for even a tenth of a second, the price would be death. War God Xiling descended from the sky and smashed his leg towards Zhou Xuanji. The thunderclap sword blocked his leg, but it was pressed down and landed on Zhou Xuanji's shoulder. The powerful force bent Zhou Xuanji's legs, and he almost fell. With a sway of his body, he turned into a silver sword and charged toward War God Xiling. This scene caused an uproar throughout the world. Sword Emperor sword transformation. This was especially so for the sword cultivators. They all knew that Zhou Xuanji had said something famous before. The man was the sword, and the sword was the man. In the past, they had thought that it was the union of the heart and the sword. Who would have thought that humans could also become swords? Do your best, Sword Tharch. Kill them all. Where is this place? We have to go and support the Sword Sovereign. The human race can't be slaves, and we can't let the Sword Emperor fight alone. The Sword Emperor is mighty. The entire human race started to shout, cheering for Zhou Xuanji, even though Zhou Xuanji could not hear them. All of the disciples wanted to go and support Zhou Xuanji, but Daoya Old Man and the others stopped them. With their strength, it would be useless even if they rushed over. On top of the mountain, Daoya Old Man suddenly took a step forward, turned around, and said to the crowd, "Look after Emperor Sword Court. Don't let the disciples leave. I'll go to a secluded place to cast a spell and increase fate for Xuanji." The crowd did not suspect him and did not stop him. The other side, Zhou Xuanji, who had turned into a silver sword, wanted to chase after Spirit Sovereign Yen, but the heavenly law puppets obstructed him in every way possible, making it impossible for him to get close to Spirit Sovereign Yen. Even if he swung his sword from afar, his sword chi would still be blocked by the heavenly law puppets. Damn it, is it really impossible? Zhou Xuanji returned to his human form and gnashed his teeth. He could not die. He had too many ties, so how could he die here? This is the general trend. How can a man's life fight against the heavens? What an interesting method. Sigh, I'm really going to die here. You still want to revive? What a pity, kid. We'll accompany you in death. Don't be afraid. To be killed by a minion, I can't accept this. The souls continuously spoke in Zhou Xuanji's ears, as if they were saying their last words. Zhou Xuanji's heart sank. You still have hope. A violent cry came and woke Zhou Xuanji up. The speaker was none other than Emperor Hanlin. Don't think about killing that bug called Spirit Sovereign Yen. Hurry up and kill the 9 great emperor candidates. Then use the celestial devil rebirth technique to be reborn. Once you're reborn, you'll become a great emperor right away and make a comeback, dominating the past and present. Emperor Hanlin said in a low voice. His tone was filled with dominance. His words shocked the other souls, and they all asked what the celestial devil rebirth technique was. Zhou Xuanji was also quite shocked. How did Emperor Hanlin know that he cultivated the celestial devil rebirth technique? He didn't have time to think too much. He found a target and madly attacked it. When the target was a heavenly law puppet, everything was easy. War God Xiling Marquis, the 9 emperors of the Sword's Way, and Lu Wuji were all very powerful. They had all become great emperors before they ascended after all, and Zhou Xuanji could not do anything to them. However, the other great emperor candidates were nothing to him. Soon, he had killed 5 great emperor candidates. At this moment he was determined to die. The more he killed, the more he would earn. The more he killed, the more he would earn. Seeing that Zhou Xuanji had changed his target, Spirit Sovereign Yen shook his head and cried out, "It's useless. Since ancient times, how many geniuses have there been? How can you kill them all?" Boom! Another heavenly law puppet descended with a powerful aura that surpassed a 5th tribulation scattered immortal. Zhou Xuanji focused on fighting. The 6th, the 7th, the 8th, including the battle at the beginning, he had already killed 9 great emperor candidates. The frenzied battle consumed a lot of energy, and the Tianxia map's supply of magic energy began to decrease. Soon, he reached the 10th great emperor candidate. He did not stop. He was going to die anyway, so he was going to kill with all his might. The more he killed, the more powerful he would be after becoming a great emperor. Bai Hao Yisan climbed up from the rubble. He coughed a few times, and his face was covered in dust. He looked up and saw that Zhou Xuanji was still fighting, which made him feel admiration for him. This boy was born in the wrong era, he sighed. If Zhou Xuanji had been 10,000 years earlier, he might have already ascended to the upper realm and become a mighty figure. This was fate. The more devilishly talented someone was, the more difficult their fate would be. Devil Emperor Dugu suddenly appeared beside Spirit Sovereign Yen and said, "You really can't spare his life?" Spirit Sovereign Yen was inwardly shocked. Such incredible speed. Hadn't this fellow just been reborn? He said in a low voice, "It's not that I don't want to give him a chance. You saw it yourself." He had already allowed the entire world to watch the battle. If he spared Zhou Xuanji, wouldn't he be giving the human race hope? Zhou Xuanji had to die. Devil Emperor Dugu's face was dark, and he frowned deeply. Spirit Sovereign Yen could not help but feel wary. At this moment, Zhou Xuanji began to show signs of fatigue. The 9 emperors of the Way of the Sword quickly charged at him, and in an instant, dozens of sword wounds appeared on his body. Even his Trisun Flame Chi robe became tattered. As expected of the 9 emperors of the Way of the Sword, Zhou Xuanji sighed in his heart. He knew that he was at the end of his rope. However, he did not stop. He continued to kill enemies. When he reached the 18th Quasi-Emperor, he finally could not hold on any longer, and was punched through the abdomen by War God Xiling, causing blood to splatter across the sky. He suddenly raised his head and let out an angry roar. All the divine swords disappeared, and a black shadow flew out from his body. It rushed into the clouds at an extremely fast speed and disappeared. Spirit Sovereign Yin frowned slightly, but didn't say anything. Devil Emperor Dugu was the same. They did not sense the aura of the primordial spirit, so they did not think too much about it. Zhou Xuanji's vitality had yet to dissipate completely. He turned to look at Spirit Sovereign Yin with an ice-cold gaze and said, "Heavenly law reincarnation. Those who are unjust will bring about their own destruction." As soon as he finished speaking, his life force was severed. The world was silent. Jiang Shui fainted on the spot. Zhou Xiaoxian hugged her and burst into tears. The eyes of Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Congjian, Bei Xiao Wangjian, Huang Lianxin Han Shenbua, Chongming Demon Monarch Lin Changge, and the rest were all red. They were filled with rage and sorrow, and were on the verge of losing their minds. Seeing Zhou Xuanji die, the demons did not feel happy. Even someone as powerful as Zhou Xuanji could not stop Spirit Sovereign Yan. Even though the demons were the main characters of the world, they were still puppets. They would still become Spirit Sovereign Yan's slaves. AI. Bai Hao Yisan felt incredibly stifled, and all the words he wanted to say turned into a sigh. War God Xiling carried Zhou Xuanji's corpse and came before Spirit Sovereign Yan. He examined it, and only after confirming that Zhou Xuanji had died did he feel at ease. However, what was strange was that Zhou Xuanji's soul had already dissipated, leaving behind only a trace of his remnant soul. He did not even have any memories. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 390. The top cultivator in the northern wilderness region, Zhou Xuanji, is dead. From today onwards, it will be the era of saints, and I will be the ruler of the mortal realm. Spirit Sovereign Yan's voice rang out in a domineering manner, as if a god was giving orders. The human race was furious, and all the cities were in an uproar. Damn it! Even the Sword Emperor is dead. Is there no one who can defeat him? He's from the upper realm, an immortal god. How can we possibly defeat him? The human race has perished. The heavenly Tao is unfair. Why is it treating us like this? Despair and fear spread among the human race. For a moment, all human dynasties were in chaos. In the face of death, there would always be people who would erupt with their inner evil desires. Sometimes humans were even scarier than demons, especially when hope is lost. Juadi Cliff. Spirit Sovereign Yan continued to create heavenly law puppets. Devil Emperor Dugu had already buried Zhou Xuanji's corpse, and a tombstone was erected. Bai Hao Yisan stood beside him, and did not say anything for a long time. Both of them had once been invincible, and now their feelings were extremely complicated. Even they themselves couldn't explain it clearly. Devil Emperor Dugu turned around and asked Spirit Sovereign Yan, "What do you plan to do next?" Spirit Sovereign Yan said with a cold smile, "I'll kill those heavenly guards first, then slaughter the human race. In order to find my son, I'll slaughter a dynasty every year. What do you think?" Now that Zhou Xuanji was dead, no one in the northern wilderness region could threaten him. After that, he would be separated from the heavenly palace, so he could cultivate without worry. As for the main character of the northern wilderness region, it was not important. As long as it wasn't a human. Devil Emperor Dugu shook his head. He leaped into the air and left swiftly. Spirit Sovereign Yin laughed loudly, not stopping them. The northern wilderness region already belonged to him, so it didn't matter where Devil Emperor Dugu went. He believed that Devil Emperor Dugu wouldn't dare to ascend, and was only thinking of ways to recover his cultivation. He turned to look at the heavenly law puppets in front of him. He revealed a maniacal smile and muttered, "Not enough. It's not enough. The more heavenly law army he had, the better. It would be best if it was enough to topple the heavenly palace." On the other side, Bai Hao Yisan prepared to sneak away. "Great Emperor Heartless, do you want to know why he told you to reincarnate?" Spirit Sovereign Yan's voice traveled into his ears, causing his body to freeze, and he stopped in his tracks. In a small town in the Bahan dynasty, a streak of black light descended from the sky and landed in a courtyard. The black light dissipated, and a naked baby appeared on the ground. His limbs were curled up, and he was sleeping peacefully. The sky was about to turn dark. A man in a plain robe walked in. He was stunned when he saw the baby. He instinctively drew his sword and looked around vigilantly. The courtyard was not big, and he lived alone. How could there be a baby here? He carefully approached the baby. When he saw the baby lying naked on the cold ground, his heart softened, and he picked it up. The humans are all pitiful in the apocalypse. The man sighed. His face was filled with worry as he carried the baby into the house. The next morning, the infant suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were pure, and there was a trace of killing intent in their depths. He was the reborn Zhou Xuanji. The memories gradually became clear in his mind. At this moment, he was lying on the bed, covered with a blanket, and the room was filled with the fragrance of sandalwood. "Sword Spirit," he called softly in his heart. "Sword Master, what can I do for you?" The sword spirit's voice rang out, making him heave a sigh of relief. He turned around and saw that there was no one else in the house. His divine telekinesis was still there, and as it swept across the area, the entire town was within his sight. There was no one in the courtyard either. As such, he took out all of his legendary swords one by one. After making sure that none of them were missing, he felt at ease. With the Celestial Devil Rebirth technique, each rebirth was not a new beginning. His soul power would be preserved, and his cultivation would recover in a short period of time. Otherwise, how could Xian Xianghua and the ancient Diablo rule over the world? He suddenly noticed that there were 18 black tattoos on his right arm, which were as thin as a strand of hair. As he looked at them, he somehow understood their meaning. Heavenly Law Mark. It was formed from the fate of a great emperor candidate. With 10 tattoos, he could become a great emperor. Zhou Xuanji could not become a great emperor for now. His body was not fully grown yet, so he needed time. With the Celestial Devil Rebirth technique's dominance, he would grow up in less than 10 years. He was not afraid that Jiang Shui would take things too hard. With Xian Xianghua around, she would surely teach her the Celestial Devil Rebirth technique. Spirit Sovereign Yan, wait a few more years. I will definitely take your head. Zhou Xuanji deeply breathed in and closed his eyes as he sensed the power of the heavens and earth. With the help of the heavens and earth, he would grow even faster. At least, he would grow faster than Xian Xianghua. After a while, he heard footsteps. The man who had saved him quickly walked in. Phew, luckily you didn't wake up. Because of you, I came back early. Do you know how many spirit pills I lost? The man muttered to himself as he took out a porcelain bottle that contained milk. He planned to feed Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji did not open his eyes, but he could sense it through his divine sense. He immediately felt a chill. Just as he was about to speak, another person rushed in. It was a woman. Pa. The woman slapped the man and said coldly, "Shengguan Jusu, I misjudged you. I never thought that you would give up on yourself. You're not a man." The man called Shengguan Jusu was furious. "What did I do? Didn't I just come back early from the lecture hall?" He said in a low voice, a sorrowful look in his eyes. The woman in front of him wore a red dress and had a pretty face. She gave off a cold and aloof aura, giving her an icy beauty. The woman in the red dress looked at him and said, "You no longer have the talent you had back then. You should cherish this opportunity to cultivate. Did you know that Immortal Master Chen originally wanted to expel you? But my father went to plead for you, giving you the opportunity to stay." Shengguan Jisu's pride was hurt, so he started to argue with the woman in the red dress. Zhou Xuanji listened the entire time and quickly understood what had happened. It turned out that they were a pair of lovers. 3 years ago, Shengguan Jisu had extraordinary talent and was high-spirited in this town, winning the woman's heart. However, 2 years ago, Shengguan Jisu's Dantian had been destroyed while he was out on a mission. Even though his Dantian had been saved, he no longer had the cultivation talent he had before. Even though the woman in the red dress did not abandon him, she became more and more impatient with him, and it was easy for them to argue. Because of this matter, Shengguan Jisu had been quite sensitive, and he had endured it all this time. However, he had come back early for Zhou Xuanji out of goodwill, so how could he allow himself to be slandered? Seeing Zhou Xuanji, the woman in red's expression became even worse, and she said in a low voice, "Shengguan Jisu, the Sword Emperor has died, and the human race is facing a great disaster. You can't even take care of yourself, and yet you're raising abandoned children?" With that, she flicked her sleeves and left. Shengguan Jisu wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, he clenched his fists and remained silent. If it was before, he might have chased after Zhou Xuanji and said all sorts of sweet nothings to him. But now, he did not want to abandon Zhou Xuanji. Because he had no parents since he was young, he had been adopted by an old beggar and relied on begging for a living. Later on, an immortal discovered that he had talent for cultivation, which changed his fate. Seeing Zhou Xuanji, he could not bear to see him, and he thought of himself. Sigh. He sighed and sat on the bench without saying a word. He suddenly remembered Zhou Xuanji. He quickly picked up the porcelain bottle and walked toward the bed. He turned around and saw Zhou Xuanji levitating above the bed. He was so frightened that his body trembled, and the vase fell to the ground. Ghost. Calm. Wonderful bookstore calm. Chapter 391. Zhou Xuanji expressionlessly looked at Shangguan Jusu. It was a little scary for a baby like him to look at someone like that. Shangguan Jusu drew his sword and took 3 steps back. He gulped and asked cautiously, "You, what kind of monster are you?" He secretly regretted it. As expected, he couldn't just randomly pick people up. If the demon child had attacked him last night, he shuddered. The more he thought about it, the more afraid he became. "I am your destiny," Zhou Xuanji said calmly. This boy was poor, but he took him in, which meant that he was kind. He was willing to help this kid. To him, it was a piece of cake. Before he became a great emperor, he could not return to Skyfall, in case he brought trouble to Skyfall. Spirit Sovereign Yen wanted to slaughter the human race, but he had to find the main character of the new world first. Otherwise, if his fate was cut off, his ambitions would fall through. Opportunity. Shangguan Jusu was stunned. His nervousness and fear instantly disappeared. He was too eager to become stronger. Back then, when he was in high spirits, who dared to not give him face? His beautiful woman was also like a little bird in front of him. Now the more he thought about it, the angrier he became. He gritted his teeth and said, "What do I need to pay?" He had read many stories about demons bewitching people and helping them become stronger, but they would also deprive them of their humanity. "It's simple," Zhou Xuanji said, causing Shangguan Jusu's heart to leap to his throat. "Call me Grandpa 3 times. Cold sweat broke out on Shangguan Jusu's forehead, and his body trembled. "Wait a minute. What?" His eyes widened, and his face was filled with astonishment. He suspected that he had heard wrongly. Zhou Xuanji gave a mysterious smile and said, "You practiced the sword?" Shangguan Jusu came back to his senses. His face was filled with indignation as he said, "I set the Sword Emperor as my goal, so I naturally trained in the sword. Unfortunately, the Sword Emperor has already perished. If I can become stronger, I will definitely take revenge for the Sword Emperor." He would never have thought that the demon child in front of him was Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji's death was witnessed by everyone in the world. Zhou Xuanji coldly harumphed and said, "The Sword Emperor is nothing. He's still dead." Shangguan Jusu was furious. He said in a low voice, "The Sword Emperor did not die a humiliating death. He fought against so many seniors, and can be ranked at the peak of history. What do you know?" The Sword Emperor was his belief, and he would not allow anyone to insult him. Zhou Xuanji laughed, feeling pleased in his heart. But in Shangguan Jusu's eyes, it was mockery. He dared to be angry, but did not dare to say anything. Skyfall. The entire Emperor Sword Court sank into sorrow. At this moment, Jiang Shui, Zhou Xiaoxian, Xiao Jinghong, and the others were overjoyed. "Is that true?" "Master is not dead yet?" Chongming Demon Monarch asked excitedly. His entire body was trembling. Xian Xianghua nodded and said, "Do you still remember that black light before he died? This matter must not be spread out. Otherwise the consequences will be unimaginable." Everyone nodded excitedly. Jiang Shui and Zhou Xiaoxian hugged each other and cried tears of joy. Xian Xianghua raised her eyebrows and said, "Do you understand how powerful this technique is now?" Zhou Xiaoxian nodded excitedly. "I want to learn." The little black snake also shouted, "This old man also." Before it could finish its sentence, Zhou Xiaoxian kicked it away. "We can't even tell the disciples of Emperor Sword Court about this. You guys should pacify them first. Chaotic times are coming, and unity is very important." Since Zhou Xuanji was not here, she had to protect his empire. Jiang Shui nodded and said, "The disciples will not disperse. They are all filled with rage." She was very proud to say this. It was the same for the others. The disciples of Emperor Sword Court had bones of steel. Half a year passed quickly. Zhou Xuanji's fall ushered in a dark period for the human race. The various kingdoms lost control, and the empires could only control their own territories. The 8 sanctums were greatly weakened, and could not rely on their influence. In a small town in the Bahan Empire, Shangguan Jis's mouth twitched as he watched the child practice the sword in front of him. Half a year had passed. Zhou Xuanji looked like he was 2 or 3 years old. He held the bookcutter's sword in his hand and looked incredibly powerful. Ever since Zhou Xuanji moved in, Shangguan Jisu could only sleep on a straw mat in the courtyard. Zhou Xuanji practiced the vibrant raindrops sword for a while before sheathing his sword and asking, "Have you learned it?" Shangguan Jisu said shamefully, "Only half." Half. Zhou Xuanji was a little surprised. He had only practiced it once, and this guy had already remembered half. This was an earth-grade sword technique. It seemed that this guy was quite talented. He practiced it again before letting Shangguan Jisu practice the sword by himself. Ever since he started following Zhou Xuanji, Shangguan Jisu did not go to the lecture hall anymore. It was not that he did not want to, but the lecture hall did not like him, and found an opportunity to kick him out. That lady in the red dress never came again. Because of this, Shangguan Jisu was sad for a long time. He often cried in the middle of the night. He did not dare to go to the lady's residence to look for her, because he was too ashamed. He was no longer the genius he used to be. Practice the sword well. When I'm satisfied, I will heal your dantian. Zhou Xuanji said this, and returned to his room. After his rebirth, his cultivation would recover quickly, but he still worked hard to speed up the process. In the next period of time, Zhou Xuanji continued to grow from 74 years old. His height grew at a visible rate. Even Shangguan Jisu, who lived with him day and night, could sense it. He felt that Zhou Xuanji grew taller every day. Half a year later, he looked like he was 6 or 7 years old. At the same time, the Donghan Empire was massacred by the Heavenly Law Army. Blood flowed like a river, and the entire northern wilderness region was alarmed. Facing Spirit Sovereign Yan's brutality, the humans could do nothing. Zhou Xuanji could only hold it in. Another year passed. Zhou Xuanji was 76 years old, but he looked like he was 12 years old. In Shangguan Jis's eyes, he was a devilish genius. The Great Shang Empire was destroyed. Out of the 7 empires, only 5 were left. In the 3rd year of his rebirth, Zhou Xuanji had grown up. Shangguan Jis's dantian had been healed by the Holy Light Redemption Sword, and he had reached great accomplishment in the Vibrant Raindrops Sword. Late at night, Zhou Xuanji came to the courtyard. Not far away, Shangguan Jisu was still cultivating on a straw mat. Phew! Zhou Xuanji took a deep breath and looked up at the night sky. He channeled magic energy into his right arm. He had already recovered his full cultivation, and so was the strength of his body. He was even more powerful than when he was alive. But he felt that it was not enough. Tonight, he was going to become a great emperor. Boom! Thunder boomed and billowing dark clouds gathered. Shangguan Jisu opened his eyes in shock. He looked at Zhou Xuanji in astonishment and asked, "What are you doing?" Somehow, he felt that Zhou Xuanji's figure was familiar. Ever since Zhou Xuanji looked more than 12 years old, he had been wearing a mask, so that Shangguan Jisu could not recognize his true identity. Zhou Xuanji ignored him. Staring at the thunderclouds, he mumbled, "After tonight, the world will worship me as the emperor. Spirit Sovereign Yan, you will die a horrible death." His words made Shangguan Jisu open his eyes wide. Spirit Sovereign Yan, the evil god of the upper realm, the mortal world's greatest enemy. He wanted to kill Spirit Sovereign Yan? Shangguan Jisu rubbed his eyes and looked carefully. He suddenly realized that Zhou Xuanji's back looked so familiar. Who is he? Shangguan Jisu was confused. At this moment, the thunderclouds parted, and a pair of eyes that were even brighter than the moon appeared. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 392. The gigantic eye was so sacred that everyone in the town could see it. What's that? Is Spirit Sovereign Yin coming to kill us? No, it's not moving. Such a horrifying eye. I feel like I'm being seen through. What's going on? Everyone in the town was shocked. Cries of shock sounded out, and panic began to spread. In the courtyard, Shangguan Jisu was also dumbfounded. Because he was the closest to Zhou Xuanji, he felt it the most. He could sense an indescribable heavenly might, which made his hair stand on end. He wanted to kneel down and worship. He looked at Zhou Xuanji again. and saw that Zhou Xuanji was glowing with a golden light. It was possible that only his figure could be seen. He had already defeated 10 great emperor candidates. There was no need for him to undergo a tribulation. He could become a great emperor directly by pouring fate into him. A wave of majestic fate rushed into his body and tempered his soul. His soul was transforming. This feeling. Zhou Xuanji looked down at his hands and mumbled to himself. He could not hide the excitement in his tone. He could clearly sense that he was becoming more powerful. The Tianxia map's image appeared above his head, faintly discernible. He looked up at the gigantic eye in the night sky, and could not help but think about its origin. Is it the heavenly law? Hunyuan Royal City in the royal study. Yang Di, who was writing, suddenly looked up at the night sky outside the window. He frowned deeply and mumbled, "This heavenly might." He stood up and walked out of the study. The man in the woven rush raincoat appeared beside him and said in a deep voice, "Someone is becoming a great emperor." Hearing this, Yang Di's pupils contracted. Becoming a great emperor? He instinctively thought of Spirit Sovereign Yen and the Heavenly Law Army and calmed down. That's right. Many great emperors had already been revived. The man in the woven rush raincoat pinched his fingers and divined. He vomited a mouthful of blood and stumbled backward, slamming into the palace wall. How can it be? First-class great emperor, supreme talent. He cried out in shock. He looked terrified, which made Yang Di frown. Outside the sea, Daoseeker stood on a small boat amidst the raging waves. He suddenly turned around and looked in the direction of the northern wilderness region. Someone is becoming a great emperor? Could it be those heavenly law puppets? Daoseeker's expression was unsightly. 3 years ago, when he heard about Zhou Xuanji's tragic death, he almost fainted. He had high hopes for Zhou Xuanji, but he failed at the last moment. Now that another person had become a martial monarch, despair surged in his heart. Was this tribulation really unbreakable? At this moment, a meteor streaked across the night sky and fell towards the horizon. Daoseeker did not notice. He was still in a daze. Juadi Cliff. Spirit Sovereign Yen sat on the peak of the mountain and comprehended the power of heavenly law. Looking down, he saw that the entire mountain was filled with heavenly law puppets. There were over 300 of them, and they were all great emperors or great emperors. Every one of them was shining brightly like a deity. Suddenly, all of the heavenly law puppets turned to look in the direction of the Bahan dynasty. Spirit Sovereign Yen opened his eyes and said in bewilderment, "This heavenly might." As the owner of the heavenly path stone, he could feel the northern wilderness region's heavenly might the most. At this moment, he could sense an extremely terrifying heavenly might descending upon the mortal realm, and it was more powerful than any of his heavenly law puppets. He could not help but furrow his brows when he noticed the abnormal behavior of the Heaven's Tao puppets. He stood up and prepared to fly towards the Bahan dynasty, but he thought of something else and sat back down. Although that heavenly might is powerful, it is not enough to threaten me. I have to think of a way to deal with the heavenly palace first. Spirit Sovereign Yin mumbled to himself with murderous intent in his eyes. Ever since he killed all the heavenly guards, the heavenly palace had sensed that something was wrong. Half a year ago, the heavenly palace sent an envoy who was killed by his heavenly law army. He understood that the heavenly palace would send even more powerful beings down to the mortal realm. However, the northern wilderness region was the mortal realm. After those from the upper realm descended, their cultivation would be suppressed to great tribulation scattered immortal. As long as they did not surpass great tribulation scattered immortal, he believed that his heavenly law army was invincible. To prevent the heavenly palace from sending too many powerful beings, he decided to continue creating heavenly law puppets. Creating heavenly law puppets did not come without a price. After coming to the mortal realm, his lifespan was no longer immortal. Every time he created a heavenly law puppet, his lifespan would be consumed. If this continued, he would die sooner or later. Unless he ascended back to the heavenly palace, or became the ruler of the mortal realm, and controlled the fate of the world. In the entire mortal realm, everyone who reached great tribulation scattered immortal could sense the heavenly might when Zhou Xuanji became a great emperor. It was boundless and filled everyone with awe. Zhou Xuanji bathed in the heavenly law fate, and his cultivation broke through to seventh tribulation scattered immortal straightaway. Somehow, he felt that the world had become so small in his perception. He looked up and could see through the night sky to another world. That world was shrouded in celestial mist, and there were many palaces and pavilions. Many celestial beasts circled in the sky, and many fairies flew around. Each of them was as beautiful as a flower, and had an otherworldly aura. If he guessed correctly, that was the heavenly palace. At this moment, in a massive palace in the heavenly palace, hundreds of people with extraordinary auras stood in the palace. The men looked majestic and mighty, while the women were beautiful and noble. The palace was brightly lit, and silver pillars supported the massive palace. It was grand and exquisite, like the pillars supporting the sky. Sitting at the main seat was a man dressed in a luxurious silver emperor's robe. He wore a jade crown and looked majestic. Although he looked lazy, he gave off a domineering aura, as if he was in control of the world. He was the lord of the heavenly palace, Seijutian. Spirit sovereign Yen betrayed us, and has the heavenly law stone. Is there anyone who is willing to descend to eliminate him? Seijutian spoke slowly. His expression was calm, and he did not take Spirit sovereign Yen seriously at all. In reality, this was the case. They had already finished discussing other important matters, and if not for a spirit sovereign mentioning this, Seijutian most likely would not have known. This subordinate is willing to descend to the mortal realm. This fellow is a dog of our Xianyuan family, and he dares to betray us? He must be tired of living. A man dressed in silver Chilan armor stepped out. A crimson halo of light floated behind him, and with his silver hair, he gave off a sharp aura that could pierce through the clouds. As soon as he stepped out, the people in the palace started to become restless. TSK, who would have thought that Xianyuan Xinhao would choose to descend to the mortal realm? With his strength, it's a waste of his talent to do such a thing. However, why does Spirit Sovereign Yen have the heavenly law stone? This is worth investigating. Spirit Sovereign Yen is seeking death. Back then, his son Ji Xian found out about the crown prince, and now he's committing a crime. How foolish. The northern wilderness is currently in the world epoch, and the Xianyuan family most likely has other plans. Hearing the discussions around him, Xianyuan Xinhao's expression did not change, and he calmly looked at Seijutian, waiting for orders. Boom! At that moment, a powerful gust of wind rose up from the ground, causing everyone to look down in shock. They saw that the ground had become transparent, and they could see a golden figure in the stormy night, but they could not make out his appearance. Seijutian frowned and said in a low voice, "Great Emperor? Someone in the current northern wilderness can become a great emperor?" The northern wilderness belonged to the heavenly palace, and whenever a great emperor expert appeared, they would immediately sense it and try to rope them in. However, most great emperors did not choose to join the heavenly palace, and they would instead roam the world by themselves. The heavenly palace could not forcefully control a new great emperor, or else they would suffer the wrath of heaven. Chapter 393. All the experts of the heavenly palace stared at the golden figure, curious as to what kind of person he was. Most of the great emperors in the northern wilderness region were very powerful. 10,000 years ago, the Hegemon Sword Emperor ruled over a region, and even the heavenly palace did not dare to offend him. Before, when Shi Shinzong had ascended, the heavenly palace had wanted to forcefully take him in. After all, Shi Shinzong had not become a great emperor yet, so he was not protected by the heavenly law fate. However, they had never thought that the Hegemon Sword Emperor would personally come to ask for him. "Your Majesty, such a genius has appeared in the northern wilderness region, and I'm willing to head there personally. After killing Spirit Sovereign Yen, I'll subdue him." Xianyuan Xinhao cupped his fists again, his voice forceful and filled with confidence. Seijutian muttered to himself, "Go." Xianyuan Xinhao did not reveal any joy. He just calmly nodded. It was not only the heavenly palace. Back in the netherworld, Judge Cui and the other Hellguards could also sense the heavenly might of becoming a great emperor. In the magistrate palace, Magistrate Cui put down his brush and looked out of the palace. He mumbled, "Someone in the northern wilderness region has become a great emperor so quickly. Becoming a martial monarch would allow one to obtain the heavenly Tao's karmic luck, shocking the world and making the gods weep." He understood the northern wilderness region. The human bloodline was not pure, and it was impossible for anyone to become a great emperor. Could it be that other races were going to rise? After all, this was a heaven and earth epoch. He thought of Zhou Xuanji, and his eyes flashed as he muttered, "Brat, don't die, or else you will let me down." He had invested so many great spirit pills on Zhou Xuanji, and did not want to waste them. Within the heavenly law fate, Zhou Xuanji was still becoming a great emperor. He was originally observing the Sky Hall, but an extremely strong force suppressed his spiritual will down to the mortal realm, and he could no longer observe the sky. He didn't think too much about it, thinking that the heavenly Tao didn't allow it. Boom! The deepest part of his soul suddenly exploded. A strange energy flowed through his bones and finally gathered in his heart. Dong! 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 His heart beat like a war drum once again, strong and powerful, causing his blood to boil. The heavenly law great emperor was above mortals, and was on par with immortals and gods. It could enter yin and yang, and traverse the 5 elements. Detected that the sword owner has become a heavenly law great emperor. Gotcha started. Ding! Congratulations! The sword owner has obtained Celestial Shaker, dream-devouring true martial devil rinsing. The sword spirit's voice suddenly sounded in his mind, and he couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. Another celestial shaking sword. The celestial shaking sword was very strong. With the sun-devouring Tiango sword, no one among the great tribulation scattered immortals was a match for him one-on-one. Now that he had obtained the celestial shaking sword, how could he not be happy? In these 3 years, he had obtained a total of 5 amethyst divine swords. That's right, they were all amethyst rank. They were the screaming sword, the perseverance sword, the dragon perishing sword, the clamoring sword, and the flying swan sword. Information about the new godly sword appeared before his eyes. Sword name: dream-devouring true martial demon sweeping level. Shocking immortal description: the true martial divine force can devour dreams and exterminate demons. Demons howl as soon as this sword is used. Be careful when using it. The description was not detailed enough, but it seemed to be very impressive. Zhou Xuanji could not help but think about even higher grade legendary swords. Ordinary or iron, bronze, silver, gold, amethyst, glorious gold, heavenly soul, intimidating spirit, celestial shaking, god-slaying, Armageddon. Could the god-slaying sword really slay gods? The Armageddon divine sword could destroy a world with one strike? He was looking forward to it. At that moment, the gigantic eyes in the night sky suddenly opened wide. A halo of light descended from the sky and landed on Zhou Xuanji's body. Boom! The area within a radius of 300 meters was flattened. Shangguan Jutsu, and some commoners were knocked unconscious. This is fate. Zhou Xuanji was shocked in his heart. He could sense that his fate had doubled. However, this was only the beginning. Numerous halos of light descended and fused into his body. There were 9 halos in total, which made his fate reach its peak. The entire human race's fate added together could not compare to his. The main thing was that the human race was about to die. Faintly, he understood the true meaning of this. Heavenly law great emperors were divided into 9 grades. 9th grade was the weakest, while 1st grade was the most powerful. Great emperors had the emperor's might that could suppress mortals. The higher the grade, the more powerful the emperor's might. A 1st grade great emperor could suppress an 8th grade great emperor. Emperor's might was the signature divine ability of a great emperor. Those heavenly law puppets were not their true bodies, and did not have the emperor's might. Otherwise, Zhou Xuanji could not have killed so many great emperor candidates. The powerful radiance dissipated, and Zhou Xuanji revealed himself. His mask had already turned into ashes. His eyes glowed with a purple light, which looked devilish and oppressive. The purple Tai Chi diagram on his forehead changed. 9 tiny patterns appeared at the edge of the Tai Chi diagram. They were like 9 tiny swords with their tips pointing outwards. He levitated in the air, and his body gave off a faint silver radiance. Under the night sky, he looked like a lofty god. He looked up and activated his emperor's might. Tonight I, Zhou Xuanji, will become a great emperor in the name of the Sword Emperor. The human race will regard me as the emperor, and the northern wilderness will regard me as the leader. Spirit Sovereign Yen, you are dead for sure. His voice resounded across the northern wilderness region and beyond, stunning everyone in the night. The world was in an uproar. The Sword Emperor did not die, and he became a great emperor? How could it be? Under the night sky, among the waves, Daoseeker opened his eyes wide. His body trembled, and an unprecedented joy surged into his heart. He became a great emperor. How could it be? How could it be? He mumbled. He suddenly raised his head and laughed out loud. Even the thunder and lightning could not scare away his excitement. He was not the only one who was excited. The entire human race was in an uproar. Countless commoners got up from their beds, and countless cultivators were roused from their meditation. The Sword Emperor was not dead, and he became a great emperor. The destruction of the Southern Han Empire and Great Shang Empire had caused the human race to fall into despair. This time, Zhou Xuanji once again brought hope to the human race with his domineering ways. The Sword Emperor became a great emperor. Ha ha ha. Am I dreaming? I knew it. He couldn't have died. He's the top cultivator in the world, the most powerful human. How could he die? Screw Lu Wuji. From tonight onwards, Zhou Xuanji is the most powerful human in history. Did I hear wrongly? Really? The heavens have eyes. They did not kill the human race. Everyone in the world cried tears of joy, and even overseas were discussing this. Ever since Spirit Sovereign Yin descended, the humans overseas had it even harder. They were surrounded and attacked by the other races, and their despair was far greater than the humans in the northern wilderness region. They did not expect the most powerful human to become a great emperor. At Skyfall, Jiang Shui, Daoya Old Man, Zhou Xiaoxian, Xian Xianghua, and the others were overjoyed. Cheers came from the foot of the mountain, and even the sea of clouds could not block them. Mom, Father became a great emperor. Zhou Xiaoxian cried out in excitement, as though she had become a great emperor. Xiao Jinghong gripped his sword and said with admiration, Revered teacher's talent is unrivaled. Becoming a great emperor in just 3 years of rebirth. Xian Xianghua was in awe. She had been reborn so many times, but why had she not become a great emperor? She sighed, but she felt even more proud. This was the man she valued. Daoya Old Man stroked his long beard and sighed in amazement. Xianer, if you knew this in the underworld, how happy would you be? I'm sure you did not expect your son to achieve such great things. While everyone in the world was exhilarated and overjoyed. But Juadi Cliff was extremely silent. Spirit Sovereign Yen stood on the peak with his fists tightly clenched, and veins bulged on his forehead. His eyes almost spat fire. Why was that brat not dead yet? Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 394. So what if you're a martial monarch? My heavenly law army will tear you to pieces. Spirit Sovereign Yen said as he gnashed his teeth. No wonder Zhou Xuanji's corpse did not have a complete soul 3 years ago. What a good trick. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. The Heavenly Hall's threat was imminent, and Zhou Xuanji the cockroach had become a great emperor, making him feel quite annoyed. He looked up at the stormy sky and murmured, Looks like I have no choice but to create you. He raised his right hand, and continued to create heavenly law puppets. At the bottom of the mountain, Wang Ho's body suddenly trembled. The other heavenly puppets were like wooden pillars, not moving at all. Wang Ho was very eye-catching. Spirit Sovereign Yin was filled with rage. He wanted to create even more powerful heavenly law puppets, so he didn't notice Marquis's abnormality. 3 years had passed, and his absolute control over the heavenly law puppets had already blinded his heart. On the other side of Juadi Cliff, Bai Hao Isin stood up and paced back and forth, continuously cursing. All kinds of vulgar words came one after another. It could be summed up in one word. F***ck. He was already surprised that Zhou Xuanji had not died, and he had never thought that this fellow would become a great emperor. Becoming a martial emperor was extremely difficult. Not to mention that the current human race's bloodline was not pure, making it impossible for them to become a martial emperor. Why? He refused to accept this. He felt that Zhou Xuanji was the child of fate, the child of heavenly law. He had become a great emperor before his 80th birthday? The more he thought about it, the angrier he became, and jealousy grew in his heart. In the end, all his emotions turned into a sigh. Maybe he can really defeat Spirit Sovereign Yan. By how Isan thought to himself. He did not want to stay humiliated by Spirit Sovereign Yan. Shangguan Jusu woke up from his dream. He had a dream. He dreamt that the Sword Emperor, whom he worshipped the most, had actually taken him as a disciple and imparted him sword techniques. Every day, he would be able to admire the Sword Emperor's grace and was truly blessed. He reluctantly opened his eyes and saw a blue sky instead of the familiar straw hut. He suddenly recalled the memory before he fainted. He did a carp flip and jumped up. Where am I? He looked around in confusion and found himself in the middle of a forest. Not far away were the corpses of 6 demonic wolves. He was shocked to find that he was holding a token in his hand. The word Emperor was engraved on it. At the same time, there was a note with a sentence written on it. With this token, you can enter the Emperor's Sword Court. As if struck by lightning, he froze on the spot. After a long while, he muttered to himself, "Could it be that he is?" His eyes widened and his breathing quickened. He was so excited that it was like he was on steroids. Hunyuan Royal City. Standing on the top of the palace, Sunlight Emperor looked at the vast universe and remained silent for a long time. Zhou Xuanji becoming a great emperor had a massive impact on his heart. He fell into an unprecedented state of confusion. All along, he had thought that he was the most powerful in the world. The battle before Zhou Xuanji's death had made him doubt himself. Fortunately, Zhou Xuanji had died. He did not expect Zhou Xuanji to make a comeback in just 3 years. He took a deep breath and turned to look at Juedi Cliff. His eyes became determined. As the former #1 in the world, he had never fought with Spirit Sovereign Yin during the human race's calamity. Even the Hunyuan Empire was full of complaints about him. This time, he intended to burn his boats. Either I die, or I become a great emperor. Sunlight Emperor murmured to himself. He turned into a golden light and leaped into the sky, disappearing into the horizon of the imperial city. While the northern wilderness was shocked by Zhou Xuanji becoming a great emperor, an uninvited guest came from overseas. A red-haired lady walked out from the sea and walked toward the beach. She wore a white dress and was drenched from head to toe. Her figure was perfectly outlined, and her face was cold and beautiful. Her eyes were indifferent. This is the northern wilderness region, the place where he was born? It's just as so. She mumbled to herself with a slight frown. The spiritual chi is ordinary, but the fate here is chaotic. It's more chaotic than any mortal realm. Seems like it's a wonderful time. Interesting, but I must find your corpse. She raised her hands, and they turned into countless blood-colored bats that flew everywhere. After she left, the ocean turned blood-red. It was a horrifying sight. In the faraway Juedi Cliff, Spirit Sovereign Yin opened his eyes suddenly. He frowned and mumbled, "Who infiltrated the northern wilderness region? Their aura is so strange, and I can't predict their fate. It shouldn't be the Heavenly Hall. This isn't their style." The Heavenly Hall was domineering. They had always been high profile in the mortal realm under their control. He turned to look at the Heavenly Law puppets below with a proud smile. 500 Heavenly Law puppets. And all of them had the potential of a great emperor candidate. Especially the two at the front. The human race's first human emperor, Emperor Xia. The demon race's supreme ruler, Great Emperor Wuwang. The two of them stood at the front of the Heavenly Law army, their auras suppressing the crowd. Seeing them, Spirit Sovereign Yan's heroic spirit was reignited. No matter who came, they had to die. Boom. A pillar of light descended from the sky, breaking through the rumbling thunderclouds and landing on the peak of a mountain hundreds of meters away. It caused the mountain to shake, and dust flew into the air. Cracks extended down the mountain, covering the entire mountain. "You must be Spirit Sovereign Yin. I am Xinyuan Shenhao. Either I kill you, or you die here." A cold voice came from within the pillar of light, and a domineering aura shook Juedi Cliff. In the distance, Bai Hao Isin opened his eyes and said in shock, "I never thought that the Heavenly Hall's second-class Great Emperor would come." Xianyuan Xinhao was a famous genius of the Heavenly Hall, and he was also a divine weapon of the Heavenly Hall. He came from another mortal realm and inherited the Xianyuan clan's bloodline. He had been invincible for 20,000 years, and he had ascended after becoming a great emperor. He had obtained Seiji Tian's love. Spirit Sovereign Yan's expression was somewhat unnatural. As a subordinate spirit sovereign of the Xianyuan clan, Xianyuan Xinhao was like the heavens to him, an unreachable existence. He never thought that the Heavenly Hall would send such a peerless genius to kill him. However, he did not panic. He stood up and loudly laughed. "Xianyuan Xinhao? You don't understand the situation?" 500 heavenly law puppets rushed into the sky and surrounded Xianyuan Xinhao. The pillar of light dissipated, and Xianyuan Xinhao appeared. He held a halberd and stood proudly. He swept his gaze over the heavenly law puppets and instantly frowned. There were so many great emperors. Even the weakest had the talent of a great emperor. Before he could speak again, the heavenly law army attacked him. Boom! Half an hour later, Spirit Sovereign Yen stood on the peak of the mountain with a disdainful smile. At the foot of the mountain, Xianyuan Xinhao half knelt on the ground. His armor was covered with blood, and he was surrounded by heavenly law puppets. Emperor Xia stood behind him, grabbing his hair. He gritted his teeth, and his eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. "Xianyuan Xinhao, you didn't expect this, did you?" Spirit Sovereign Yen smiled disdainfully. Great Emperor Wuwang stood behind him, protecting him in case he suffered a sneak attack. Xianyuan Xinhao said coldly, "Insect, you only borrowed the power of the heavenly law. Do you think you can overthrow the Heavenly Hall with just these few puppets?" If he had not descended into the mortal realm, and his cultivation had been sealed, how could he have lost? "Ha ha ha! You won't be able to see the day I overthrow the Heavenly Hall." Spirit Sovereign Yen smiled disdainfully. Spirit Sovereign Yen laughed in disdain, feeling extremely good. So what if he was a second-class great emperor and a peerless genius? He was still kneeling in front of him. "You won't even live past today." A cold voice resounded through the sky, as if countless people were shouting at the same time. Spirit Sovereign Yin looked around in shock. "Come, wonderful bookhouse." Chapter 395. Zhou Xuanji, get out here. Spirit Sovereign Yin furiously roared. Just from the voice, he knew who this person was. However, he could not sense Zhou Xuanji's aura, so he did not know where that fellow was. Xianyuan Xinhao frowned. He could not find this person either. Could it be that this person was the mortal who succeeded in becoming a great emperor not long ago? 1,000 meters away, Zhou Xuanji appeared on a mountain. He held 2 swords in his hands. They were the sun-devouring Tiango sword and the dream-devouring true martial devil-sweeping sword. The dream-devouring true martial's devil-vanquishing sword was a broadsword. Its blade was bright red, as if it had been forged with fresh blood. His Tri-Sun Flame Chi robe was no longer there. He wore a white robe, and his black hair casually draped over his shoulders. Under the thunderclouds, his white robe fluttered. The aura of a Sword Dao Great Emperor shook the wind and clouds. Sensing his gaze, Spirit Sovereign Yin turned around abruptly. When he saw Zhou Xuanji clearly, he laughed furiously and said, "Brat, you really did not die. Very good, you came to me again." Enraged, he immediately ordered 100 heavenly law puppets led by war god Xiling to attack. The 100 quasi-emperors and great sovereigns moved at the same time, stirring up a terrifying gale that shook the mountains. Zhou Xuanji's black hair danced wildly in the wind. He raised his eyelids, and his violet eyes looked incredibly devilish. A 9-sword violet Tai Chi diagram appeared on his forehead, and an indomitable aura exploded out from him. "Spirit Sovereign Yin, I will let you feel the terror and despair of all living beings," he said softly, but his voice was like thunder that resounded throughout Juedi Cliff. War God Xiling punched out, causing the air to explode with a deafening sound. 9 sword souls appeared behind Zhou Xuanji. Sky-dominating divine sword, soul eater / tempest / 100-mile flying sword, Vibrant Raindrops Sword, Moonlit Wind Sword Dance, 10,000 Ultimate Steps, Trisource Vein Severing Sword, 36 Paths Jade Shao Sword Art. Each of the 9 sword souls had their own postures and auras. One of the sword souls disappeared into thin air, and then condensed again. Pucci, War God Xiling, was directly cut into 2 halves, turning into countless sparks that drifted away, no longer existing. Zhou Xuanji started to walk down the mountain. He did not walk quickly or slowly, and his gaze was fixed on Spirit Sovereign Yan. This scene caused Spirit Sovereign Yan's heart to jump. So powerful. Many great emperor candidates and great emperors leapt at him, and the sword souls behind Zhou Xuanji continuously shot out. Sword light continuously flashed, and an icy coldness filled the heavens and earth. He didn't lift his sword with both hands. With just his sword soul, he was a sword emperor. Not a single heavenly law puppet could withstand a single strike from him. After taking 10 steps, the 100 Heavens Path puppets were all destroyed. Silence. The world was silent. Spirit Sovereign Yan and Xianyuan Xinhao were both given a big fright, and they looked at Zhou Xuanji in a daze. This was especially true for Xianyuan Xinhao. He knew how powerful the War God Force spirits and the Heavenly Law puppets were. Previously, he had fought 30 Heavenly Law puppets alone, and was defeated. This person actually killed 100 venerables in 10 steps. How is this possible? How can there be such a powerful existence in the mortal world? Could it be that he is a true god that has descended to the mortal world? He swallowed his saliva, and his heart was in turmoil. If he was at the peak of his cultivation, he could easily do it. The key was that this was the mortal realm. The heavenly law would suppress one's cultivation. Little brat, don't be so arrogant. Spirit Sovereign Yan roared furiously, and 300 heavenly law puppets blocked in front of him. In the distance, Bai Hao Yisin hid behind a hill and carefully watched. This is too ridiculous. He couldn't believe his eyes, he thought with trepidation. Zhou Xuanji's expression did not change as he slowly walked toward the foot of the hill. With both swords in his hands, his white robe fluttered in the wind. His eyes were so indifferent, filled with absolute confidence and a domineering aura that looked down on all enemies. The sun-devouring Tiango sword and dream-devouring heavenly martial devil-rinsing sword were both immortal-shaking legendary swords. With the world's power, no great tribulation scattered immortal could withstand them. After becoming a great emperor, he was reborn. His speed and reaction were much faster than before. Together with the sword soul's sharp attacks, it was not difficult for him to kill the heavenly law puppets instantly. 18 heavenly law puppets appeared in all directions around Zhou Xuanji simultaneously. They cast their divine abilities and prepared to kill him. Zhou Xuanji smiled with extreme disdain. Countless sword shadows appeared out of nowhere and tore the 18 heavenly law puppets into pieces, turning them into ashes. Primordial Chaos Sword Shadow. The Sword Soul's Primordial Chaos Sword Shadow covered a huge area, and its destructive power was just as horrifying. The 9 emperors of the Sword's Way followed. Countless sword chi pressed toward him from all directions, and the hill under his feet was pulverized immediately. But he did not hesitate. He continued to walk in the air. The 9 sword souls flashed and blocked all the sword chi of the 9 emperors. At the same time, he charged toward them with an even more domineering aura. Instant kill. 9 emperors of the Sword's Way disperse. One after another, the heavenly law puppets were killed and exploded like fireworks. It was a magnificent sight. Zhou Xuanji's robe fluttered in the violent gale. He walked forward elegantly without raising the swords in his hands. His sharp eyes never blinked, and his murderous intent was locked onto Spirit Sovereign Yan. How can it be? How can he be so powerful? Spirit Sovereign Yan's face was dark. His body trembled slightly, and his heart was filled with fear. Xianyuan Xinhao's expression was complicated, and his mind was blank. This person was already so powerful in the mortal realm. If he went to the upper realm, he did not dare to imagine. Zhou Xuanji, he remembered this name. He would never forget this scene for the rest of his life. Before a cliff in the east, a figure was watching the battle in silence. It was Yang Di. Yang Di's face was livid, and he clenched his fists in his sleeves. The man in the woven rush raincoat appeared beside him and sighed. This boy has already soared into the sky. He is no longer on the same level as you. The heart-wrenching words made Yangdi's body tremble. Can one become so powerful after becoming a great emperor? He mumbled to himself, his tone filled with reluctance. How could he defeat Zhou Xuanji? The man in the woven rush raincoat shook his head. He wanted to say that Zhou Xuanji could not be so powerful even if he became a great emperor. Because Zhou Xuanji was a first-class great emperor. The number of first-class great emperors in the human race could be counted on one's fingers. Even a first-class great emperor should not have such battle power. Zhou Xuanji, who are you? Spirit Sovereign Yin gnashed his teeth and roared furiously. His face was hideous, and he was extremely furious. He did not believe that an ordinary person could have such power. Even if he became a great emperor, he could not be so powerful. Could this guy be the reincarnation of a powerhouse from the upper realm? Although Baihao Yisin was in such a sorry state, there were many people more powerful than him in the upper realm. Could he be the reincarnation of a true god? At the thought of this, the fear in his heart grew even stronger. I'm Zhou Xuanji, the one and only sword emperor. Zhou Xuanji laughed coldly. The murderous intent in his words froze the heavens and earth. After 100 steps, the 300 heavenly law puppets were all destroyed. The Tianxia map provided him with magic energy madly. The power of the world surrounded his body, forming a visible gale. The 9 sword souls were still standing proudly behind him, looking majestic and mighty. Spirit Sovereign Yin was furious. He sent Emperor Xia to lead 50 heavenly law puppets to kill Zhou Xuanji. Xianyuan Xinhao escaped from danger because of this, and he collapsed onto the ground pathetically. Emperor Xia raised his right arm, and a radiant sun appeared on his palm. It had a diameter of 3,000 meters. He swung his right hand, and the majestic radiant sun smashed toward Zhou Xuanji. The sword flashed. The radiant sun was extinguished, and Emperor Xia was killed. He could not even withstand a single blow. Zhou Xuanji laughed condescendingly as he got closer and closer to Spirit Sovereign Yin. He was not in a hurry to kill Spirit Sovereign Yin. He wanted Spirit Sovereign Yin to experience the helplessness of death. Why is it like this? Why? Spirit Sovereign Yin panicked completely. Even Emperor Xia could not defeat Zhou Xuanji. He did not have many heavenly law puppets left to rely on. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 396. Zhou Xuanji took 8 steps in the air, and the 50 great emperors and great emperors all dissipated. No one could block a single strike from him. The wind and waves were like dragons, and the thunder and lightning were mighty. His white robe was not damaged, nor was there a speck of dust on it. Spirit Sovereign Yin was so scared that he felt like his guts were going to explode. He immediately used his hands to continue drawing the power of heavenly law to create heavenly law puppets. You overestimate yourself. The current you is no match for me. No matter how many puppets you hire, you will not be able to escape death. Zhou Xuanji looked at Spirit Sovereign Yin condescendingly as he laughed. He had not even used his full strength, and Spirit Sovereign Yin was already afraid. How boring. He crossed 30 meters with a single step, increasing his pace. Seeing this, Spirit Sovereign Yin's heart thumped, and his scalp turned numb. Heavens! Please bestow me with tyranny. Spirit Sovereign Yin roared furiously. He couldn't care less about the loss of his lifespan. He had to escape this calamity. Great Emperor Wuwang and Lu Wuji led the remaining heavenly law puppets and charged at Zhou Xuanji ferociously. They did not know fear, and only knew how to obey orders. Only Marquis did not move. Seeing Marquis's abnormality, Spirit Sovereign Yan's heart trembled, but he didn't have time to think. Boom, 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 bolts of lightning descended. Next, numerous heavenly law puppets flew out and swarmed toward Zhou Xuanji. With the 9 sword souls, Zhou Xuanji was extremely domineering. He walked forward step by step without looking back. The heavenly law puppets were destroyed one after another. Their divine abilities could not even touch Zhou Xuanji. The sword chi was like a rainbow, and the ground below shook violently. Billowing dust swept into the distance like a sandstorm, connecting with the thunderclouds and covering the sky. Seeing this berserk scene, Bai Hao Isin gulped. 2F** King Strong. At this moment, he suddenly wanted to become sworn brothers with Zhou Xuanji. With Zhou Xuanji, did he still need to self-destruct in the northern wilderness region? No. I am the heartless great emperor. You can't be such a coward. How could he have the idea of joining him just because he couldn't beat him? Zhou Xuanji, you and I can work together. The Sky Palace is your true enemy. Spirit Sovereign Yin said with gritted teeth. Seeing that the heavenly law puppets could do nothing to Zhou Xuanji, he was extremely afraid. Even his soul was trembling. Zhou Xuanji stared at him and said calmly, I want to kill you. There's no point in killing me. The heavenly hall will still come down. I just want to kill you. Can you be a little more rational? I can be your helper. It's impossible for you to stop the Sky Palace. But I still want to kill you. Are you crazy? Do you know how many experts are hidden in the Heavenly Palace? I still want to kill you. Spirit Sovereign Yin almost collapsed. Was there such a huge grudge between them? Up until now, he had not killed anyone by Zhou Xuanji's side. He had only slaughtered humans. However, he neglected one point. He had killed Zhou Xuanji. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. After the Heavenly Path puppets landed on the ground, they quickly charged forward. Spirit Sovereign Yin aged at a speed visible to the naked eye, but he had no choice but to hold on. After killing 800 Heavenly Law puppets, Spirit Sovereign Yin was no longer as domineering as before. His hair was white, and his skin was wrinkled. He was like a candle in the wind, about to be extinguished at any moment. Damn it! Spirit Sovereign Yan's eyes were bloodshot, and his body felt cold from head to toe. Zhou Xuanji was less than 300 meters away from him. Their eyes met, and he could see the murderous intent in Zhou Xuanji's eyes. An unresolvable killing intent. Your trump card can't even block one slash from me. You are such a piece of trash. Zhou Xuanji laughed condescendingly, which made Spirit Sovereign Yin so furious that he almost exploded. Just when he was about to speak, a figure dashed toward him. It was Bai Hao Isin. Let this emperor kill this guy. Bai Hao Isin roared furiously. His eyes were sharp like an unparalleled war god. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. This dog wanted to kill him? Just when he was about to send Bai Hao Isin flying, Bai Hao Isin was already 100 meters away from them. He raised his arms and roared furiously. Damn! Zhou Xuanji could not help but curse. Wasn't this guy too direct? Boom! Bai Hao Isin self-destructed, and a powerful radiance engulfed Zhou Xuanji and Spirit Sovereign Yin. Marquis quickly dodged. The ground crumbled from the impact of the explosion. The thunderclouds were blown away, and everything turned into dust. The powerful radiance illuminated the entire Juedi cliff, and countless ghosts hid in fear. Yang Di and the man in the woven rush raincoat flew into the sky, away from the explosion. Other than self-destructing, what else does this guy know? Yang Di said with gritted teeth. He had fought Bai Hao Isin before, and this guy self-destructed when he could not win. He did not expect this guy to self-destruct again to kill Spirit Sovereign Yin. He looked forward to it. Could Bai Hao Isin blast Zhou Xuanji to death? The man in the woven rush raincoat sighed. The great Emperor Heartless has fallen to such a state. A long while later, the powerful radiance dissipated, and the shockwave from the explosion subsided. Amidst the billowing dust, Zhou Xuanji stood in the air. The dream-devouring heavenly martial demon destroyer in his right hand pierced through Spirit Sovereign Yan's chest and lifted him into the air. At this moment, Spirit Sovereign Yin was covered in blood, and his bones could be seen on some parts of his body. He looked extremely wretched. Zhou Xuanji was not injured. With world reincarnation activated, how could Bai Hao Isin's self-destruction hurt him? Staring at Spirit Sovereign Yin, Zhou Xuanji said with a disdainful smile. Now a passerby wants to commit suicide, or should I kill you with my own hands? What are your last words before you die? Spirit Sovereign Yin was already at the end of his rope when he created the heavenly law puppets crazily. After Bai Hao Isin's self-destruction, he lost all his combat power. At this moment, he was no different from a dead dog. Spirit Sovereign Yin gritted his teeth and said, Zhou Xuanji, you will regret this. One day, you will understand that my ambition was right. The northern wilderness region humans should not have been saved. The bloodline of the northern wilderness humans is impure because of that senior's mighty power. With your power, you should have ascended and left the human race, but you chose to be involved in this. The northern wilderness humans have produced so many powerful cultivators. Have you seen any of them return? The more he spoke, the angrier he became, and he coughed up blood continuously. Who is that senior? Zhou Xuanji asked expressionlessly. Spirit Sovereign Yen did not reply but said with gritted teeth, I am the chosen one, protected by the heavenly law. I cannot. PFFTT. Zhou Xuanji swung his sword with his left hand and decapitated Spirit Sovereign Yen. Boom! Spirit Sovereign Yen's body radiated with a powerful rainbow radiance and soared into the clouds. A rock leaped out and flew to the top of the sky. The heavenly law stone. Zhou Xuanji wanted to grab it instinctively, but a sense of danger came to his mind, and he stopped instinctively. He trusted his instincts. So, he watched as the heavenly law stone flew into the sky. The thunderclouds parted, and a gigantic black hole appeared. Looking at the hole, Zhou Xuanji felt a chill in his heart. At this moment, a silhouette came from afar. It was Yang Di. He chased after the heavenly law stone. Soon, he caught hold of the heavenly law stone, and was brought toward the black hole by it. He looked back at Zhou Xuanji with a calm expression and determined eyes. Zhou Xuanji, you have not truly fought with this emperor. This emperor is the top cultivator in the world. It was like this in the past now, and in the future, he said proudly, regaining his domineering attitude. Zhou Xuanji was speechless. Little brother, you are playing with fire. Even he felt threatened by it. How could Yang Di resist? Shortly after, under his gaze, Yang Di and the heavenly law stone disappeared into the black hole. You were smart to not grab the heavenly law stone. A cold voice came. Zhou Xuanji turned around and saw Marquis looking at him. Yes. Chapter 397. This heavenly law puppet can speak? It has its own consciousness. Zhou Xuanji was shocked in his heart. He stared at Marquis and asked, You have your own consciousness? Marquis maintained his silhouette and replied calmly, Back then, when I became a great emperor, I played some tricks, but I did not expect to use them. The other great emperors and great emperors might have them too, but they allowed it silently. If those ancient powerhouses were still alive, their cultivation must have reached a horrifying level. How could they not sense that someone created their heavenly law puppets? After all, the heavenly law puppets and the original body were connected by fate. Allowed it silently? Could it be that what Spirit Sovereign Yin said was true? The northern wilderness humans have an unspeakable secret? Zhou Xuanji asked with a frown. Those powerhouses allowed Spirit Sovereign Yin to slaughter the humans. It was really disappointing. The image of the sages in his eyes was like a dream. Marquis nodded and said, The humans today are not the descendants of Emperor Xia. Zhou Xuanji frowned even more. He had heard about this before. Back then, Lu Wuji ascended out of anger because of this. The current human ancestor of the northern wastelands is still alive, but he has already fallen into the evil path, and is now a source of bad luck. His existence will affect the destiny of his descendants, and as time goes by, everyone will follow him into the evil path, and harm the many heavens. Do you understand? Marquis's words made Zhou Xuanji fall into silence. A while later, he said, The sins of the ancestors must be cleansed by the blood of the descendants? This is just an excuse for your helplessness. You are afraid. Why should the current human race be responsible for their ancestors from more than 100,000 years ago? They could not choose their birth. Could this be fate? Marquis smiled and said, You are right. That's why I'm here. I wanted to wait for an opportunity, but I did not expect you to rise so quickly. You really impressed me. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow slightly and felt warmth in his heart. Marquis was indeed the most powerful person in the history of the human race. Dahlia Old Man was right. This guy was indeed the most domineering existence in the history of the human race. To be honest, I wanted to save you when you were fighting back then, but I saw that you knew the celestial devil rebirth technique, so I did not help. The person who created this energy technique was my old friend. It's a pity that he fell into the evil path because of love, and was doomed eternally. Marquis sighed endlessly as he spoke. He lamented, only those who are deeply in love can master this technique. Zhou Xuanji could not help but think of Xian Xianghua. Who is that person? Who tampered with the human bloodline? Zhou Xuanji asked as he looked at Marquis. He felt an unprecedented interest in human history. Those seemingly dead people were actually controlling this world. Wang Ho replied, that northern wilderness human's ancestor was called the demonic emperor. As for who tampered with the northern wilderness human bloodline, I'm not sure either. Only that his surname was Run. The demonic emperor. Could it be the master of the demonic emperor bloodline? Zhou Xuanji was shocked in his heart. As for the person with the surname Run, he had no way of contacting him. From what he knew, there didn't seem to be anyone with the surname Run who was particularly strong. The heavenly palace is not scary. The scary ones are those who want to kill the humans of the northern wilderness. I also belong to the northern wilderness, but I have already broken through the restrictions of my race, so I don't have to worry about anything. However, you are different. Your path of growth will be filled with difficulties. Are you ready? Wang Ho continued. His tone was solemn as if he was passing on his last words. Zhou Xuanji replied, I've already prepared it. Along the way, he had already encountered a lot of difficulties. What's your plan? He asked instead. Spirit Sovereign Yin was dead, and the heavenly law stone had disappeared. Wang Ho regained his freedom. Wang Ho said with a smile, I'm just a remnant soul. My life and death have nothing to do with me. I plan to investigate some things in the northern wilderness region. The appearance of the heavenly law stone has already caused great chaos in the northern wilderness region, and the heavenly law has taken it back. That guy overestimated himself and chased after the heavenly law stone just now, so he will be in a miserable state. However, I'm curious who gave him the heavenly law stone. With Spirit Sovereign Yan's capability, he could not have obtained the heavenly law stone. There are too many mysteries in this mortal realm. You're on your own. After that he turned around and left. Zhou Xuanji did not stop him. He looked at the direction in which Wang Ho left, and was in deep thought. The thunderclouds dispersed, and the black hole disappeared as well. Zhou Xuanji shook his head, and channeled his magic energy, to draw upon the power of the heavens and earth, to send a message to the world. Spirit Sovereign Yen, and the Heavenly Law Army have been killed by me, Zhou Xuanji. All races should stop fighting and rest. The crisis is not over yet. The heavenly palace behind Spirit Sovereign Yin will descend soon. Hearing this, the world was shocked. Immense joy exploded in every corner of the world, including overseas. Without Spirit Sovereign Yin, what was the point of the other races fighting for the position of the main character? The entire world began cheering the Sword Emperor's name. Countless people cried tears of joy, and some were bawling for their dead relatives and friends. Han Empire. In a city, Shangguan Jusu and the woman in the red dress stood in front of the gate of a residence. The surrounding streets were in a frenzy. Countless people were roaring, cheering, and crying. Shangguan Jusu and the woman were stunned. The love between a man and a woman was not greater than life and death. He did it. Shangguan Jusu's expression was complicated. He was not surprised, because he had long felt that Zhou Xuanji had a chance to win. In his eyes, Zhou Xuanji was invincible and omnipotent. He had witnessed Zhou Xuanji's rebirth, and he felt a sense of accomplishment. The world is at peace now. You don't have to work so hard to cultivate anymore. I won't force you anymore, the woman in the red dress said. The woman in the red dress had a complicated look in her eyes. The two had been in love for many years after all. Recalling how high-spirited Shangguan Jusu was, she could not help but fall into a daze. Shangguan Jusu gave a brilliant smile and said, No, I will work even harder than before. Thank you for taking care of me for the past 3 years. I will not come back anymore. I hope you can find a good partner. After that, he turned around and left. The woman in the red dress was stunned. She took 2 steps forward and asked, Where are you going? Shangguan Jusu held onto the sheath and waved it. He did not speak or look back. The past had been severed by his sword. After spending 3 years with Zhou Xuanji, His heart had become broad-minded and changed. He was no longer obsessed with love. He wanted to become someone who could support the heavens and earth like Zhou Xuanji, supporting the world with the sword, saving the world with the sword. Looking at his determined back view, the woman in the red dress fell into a daze. She suddenly felt a little regretful. All her emotions could not be turned into words to ask him to stay. She felt like there was a fishbone stuck in her throat. At Juedi Cliff, Zhou Xuanji came up to Xianyuan Xinhao and took out the Holy Light Redemption Sword to heal him. He could sense Xianyuan Xinhao's great emperor aura. This brat was a second-class great emperor. Although he was not as good as him, he was still a devilish cultivator. Why did you save me? Xianyuan Xinhao sat up and asked with a complicated expression. Before he descended into the mortal realm, he promised Sage Yutian that he would subdue Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji stood before him and looked down at him. I just wanted to save you. Do I need a reason? A second-class great emperor as a sword slave? Was that cool? Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 398. He just wanted to save her. Did he need a reason? Xianyuan Xinhao listened silently, not knowing what to say. After a while, Zhou Xuanji sheathed his sword and was prepared to leave. Aren't you going to ask about my background? Xianyuan Xinhao could not help but ask. Zhou Xuanji's casual attitude made him feel humiliated. Am I that unbearable? One had to know that in the heavenly hall, he got whatever he wanted. Even Sage Yutian had to treat him with respect. Zhou Xuanji stopped and asked, You are from the heavenly hall, right? I know. Xianyuan Xinhao didn't give up. He said, I came to capture you and put you under heavenly hall's control. Zhou Xuanji looked back at him indifferently and said, You are not a match for me. His heart was pierced. Xianyuan Xinhao was so angry that he coughed up blood. He struggled to stand up. If I can defeat you, will you come with me? He looked at Zhou Xuanji and asked with determination. He had personally witnessed how powerful Zhou Xuanji was. It was the first time he had seen a seventh tribulation scattered a mortal with such power. He must rope in such a prodigy for the Sky Palace. Zhou Xuanji asked with a smile, What if you lose? Xianyuan Xinhao fell silent. From the looks of things, it was impossible for him to defeat Zhou Xuanji in the northern wilderness region. You're a second-grade great sovereign. Is there anyone in the heavenly palace with a higher talent than you? Zhou Xuanji asked. Hearing this, an arrogant expression appeared on Xianyuan Xinhao's face. He said proudly, No. Apart from me, the most talented person is only a fourth-grade great sovereign. Experts who had surpassed the fourth-grade great sovereign realm looked down on the heaven palace. Follow me. I'm a class 1 great sovereign. When I ascend, even the heavenly palace will have to submit to me. Zhou Xuanji said as he raised his brow. His words were domineering and did not take the heavenly hall seriously at all. First-class great emperor. Xianyuan Xinhao fell silent again. Zhou Xuanji leaped up and left swiftly. He wanted to subdue Xianyuan Xinhao, but he wasn't in a hurry. This kind of heaven's chosen would definitely not go back so easily, because he had been defeated too badly earlier. This fellow would definitely challenge him again in the future. There was still a long way to go, so he had to loosen the reins only to grasp better. No hurry, no hurry. Zhou Xuanji, who are you? Xianyuan Xinhao muttered to himself, clenching his fists. The previous battle was too shocking. He would never forget it for the rest of his life. After leaving Juedi Cliff, Zhou Xuanji stopped. Come out. Just as he finished speaking, the man in the raincoat appeared out of thin air in front of him. This kid. The man in the woven rush raincoat felt quite startled. He had never thought that Zhou Xuanji's perception would reach such a level. He opened his mouth and said, Sunlight Emperor is stubborn and doomed. I want to follow you and assist you. What do you think? Zhou Xuanji said with interest. Oh? What do you want, and how can you help me? Weren't you very arrogant before? When I fought Huangquan Drake King, you said that I would definitely die. What about now? He was secretly pleased, but he didn't show it. After becoming a great emperor, he no longer cared about the man in the woven rush raincoat. It was not an exaggeration to say that he did not care about anyone in the entire northern wilderness region. Only his wife was an exception. I just want the human race to prosper and maintain its position as the main character of the world. I can do whatever you want me to do, but as a tribulation executive, I can't attack the people of the world. I can't even have physical contact with them. The man in the raincoat said honestly. He was still very confident. Compared to Dao Seeker, he knew more about the northern wilderness region. Zhou Xuanji fell into deep thought and did not give an answer immediately. The man in the woven rush raincoat took a deep breath and said, I can reveal a shocking piece of news to you now. A person from the upper world, who doesn't belong to the heavenly palace, has already infiltrated the northern wilderness region. Her strength is at 9 tribulations scattered immortal, the peak of the mortal world. Zhou Xuanji frowned and asked, Who is she? The man in the raincoat did not hide anything. This person from the upper realm was called Xiao Hongjun. She was an evil woman with a lot of sins. Even the heavenly hall could not do anything to her. The man in the woven rush raincoat did not know the reason why she descended into the mortal world. However, according to him, Xiao Hongjun was a greater threat than the heavenly hall. It was said that no matter where this devil went, he would bring misery and suffering. His father was a leading figure in the upper realm's devil path, and was as powerful as an immortal. Alright, you can follow me from now on. I want you to investigate the whereabouts of the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline. As for Xiao Hongjun, he did not want to care about her for now. At least for now, Xiao Hongjun did not act recklessly. He didn't want to create enmity for no reason. The hatred between the heavenly palace and the ancestors of the human race was already deep enough. Alright. The man in the raincoat was straightforward and left immediately. After he disappeared, Zhou Xuanji remembered something. I forgot to get this guy to show his true colors. He's always acting mysterious and acting like a villain. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and laughed. After that he flew toward Skyfall. At the same time, the human sanctums and empires began to take action. Previously, because of Spirit Sovereign Yen, they could only hide. But now they had to regain control of their territories. The restless demons all returned home in fear, and did not dare to harass the humans. The human race had a great emperor. Every time everyone thought about this, they would be shocked. In the past, they could only listen to legends. But now, there were existences that surpassed legends. The entire world was discussing Zhou Xuanji. He defeated Lu Wuji, Wang Ho, the 9 emperors of the Sword's Way, War God Xiling, Emperor Xia, Great Emperor Wuwang, Buddha Ghost Emperor, and so on before he ascended. Those who had shaken history could not defeat Zhou Xuanji, even if they all worked together. This was too horrifying. No one doubted it because Spirit Sovereign Yen had already died in Zhou Xuanji's hands. 3 days later, Songhai Ziggurat began publishing a biography, The Era of the Sword Emperor. This book recorded all of Zhou Xuanji's deeds since he was young. It described Zhou Xuanji as the most powerful great emperor in history. To suck up to Zhou Xuanji, Songhai Ziggurat distributed this book for free. They distributed millions of copies every day, and it quickly became popular among the humans. On Skyfall, the disciples were scattered all over the mountain to practice their swords. As they practiced, they discussed excitedly. They had been excited for a few days, waiting for Zhou Xuanji's return. Zhou Xuanji becoming a great emperor made Emperor Sword Court the most powerful sect in the northern wilderness region. In the future, when they traveled the world, they would be very proud. Little did they know that their grand teacher had already returned to the summit. Zhou Xuanji gathered everyone together. Chen Bantian and Ming Tianling had also returned. Other than Jiang Shui, Daoya Old Man, and Xian Xianghua, everyone knelt before him, each more excited than the last. Zhou Xuanji sat on a stone bench and said with a smile, "Get up." Everyone was shocked. Just by sitting there and doing nothing, he gave them an immense pressure. He was more majestic than anyone they had ever seen in their lives. Daoya Old Man stroked his long beard and smiled. He was also shocked in his heart. This is a heavenly law great emperor? Tell me about Emperor Sword Court's situation first. Zhou Xuanji asked first. Everyone fought to answer first, which made him laugh. In these 3 years, Emperor Sword Court had lost some disciples, but it did not affect its foundation. It continued to develop steadily. After chatting with everyone for a while, Xian Xianghua called him to a place with no one else around. The two came to a forest. Xian Xianghua turned to look at him with a serious expression and said, "These days, I have been dreaming of you. I dreamed of being devoured by countless blood bats." Come, wonderful book house. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.